Welcome to the May 1st, 2023 meeting of the Town of Richmond Selectboard. Would anybody like to make a public comment here at the start about any item not on the agenda?
I think it's the next part of that.
No, this is the time.
To possibly change the agenda.
Oh, no, we're not to that yet. Sorry, I thought you had a public comment. Okay, additions or deletions to the agenda. Kara has a request to take item N as in Nancy, to follow on the reappraisal process and move that between H and I. I have no problem with that. Does anybody have a problem with moving that up? Seeing none, we will move N to directly after H.
Thank you.
Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda?
I would just have a comment about the agenda. One of the things that's on our agenda is the zoning. I don't know what number it is, or what letter it is.
That one's H.
I think H, okay. It's scheduled for 15 minutes. It may take longer than that to go through all of the zoning changes. However, we have a lot of timely issues after that that I think we need to deal with. So I would encourage us to try to stick to the 15 minutes.
Okay, then I put N in front of H then.
I have no problem with N in front of H either. Anybody?
I already moved it to below H,
Okay.
but I'll move it to above H.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Jeff, for warning me.
Okay, seeing no other additions or moving around with the agenda. Our first,
Oh, we do have one small addition,
please do.
and this can go at the end, just an update on the historic preservation grant, and that can be last agenda item.
Okay, so an update on the historic preservation grant. That can be the last item. Okay, moving on into the agenda. Our first item on the agenda is something I'm very pleased to announce. Collin Heskett, who is with us tonight, is here as a new Eagle Scout. Who has been in the Boy Scouts know that is not something they hand out casually. Collin and his family have relocated to St. Albans, but he did complete his Eagle Scout with the Richmond troop. And so he is here tonight to for us to say attaboy to, but he's also here to tell us a little bit about his Eagle Scout project. So Collin, if you'd like to come up. If
Yep,
Josh will
okay.
the slides, you can.
Yep, I'll do the slides for you.
Need a bigger center.
Give me a sec. If you want, you can, I'll get your slideshow up here in just a second. I just need to get caught up on how to make that happen.
When he's doing that up, maybe just explaining what the historical society, the restoration historical grant is.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about then.
It's for the library renovations,
Okay,
and it went from,
yes.
they gave us more money than we asked for.
Sweet.
Um,
And they turned this down.
It's a good thing.
Right?
Okay, so slide.
Okay.
Yeah, so slides. Okay, so slide should actually, I haven't even tried to target.
Okay.
Denise, this is actually last year's grant. We got turned down for this year's. It's a broom grant.
It's coming. I'm sorry, I was behind on all of my
You're going to
information.
share the slides from this computer.
Yeah, that's all I always do. I just had enjoyed it in this computer, kind of running around. But now that I'm here, I think we're going to be good. So here we go. All right, Colin, without further ado. the
All right,
floor is
Just
yours.
want to minimize the.
Yep.
So I worked with the St. Albans Historical Society on a project that we call our historic Church Street, because it's the other famous church street in the state of Vermont. And it's an effort to fundraise for the repair and upkeep of the 5 historical buildings on Church Street, because they are upwards of 200 years old and breaking down. So you can just kind of flip through the
Okay,
slides.
I didn't know.
They're in no particular order.
Gotcha.
So they got a grant from Vermont's portion of the Build Back Better thing. And we basically, they basically bought a bunch of signs that will tell the history of the buildings.
Those kids planted.
Yeah, that tell the history of the buildings. At the moment, they are completely empty because of things not getting shipped. So if you go there right now, they're just blank, empty signs sitting ugly. But basically, we worked with. I got my troop 23, all the way up to St. Albans, which I didn't expect all of them to show up, but they did
Wow.
for the most part. But I also got in contact with Troop 70 there, which is a co-ed boys girls troop. And they helped on the second day, and we had one boy from their troop on the first day. So we had 2 work days, one with all of Troop 7 or Troop 23, as you're seeing here, where we got 4 out of the 5 signs in, and then due to scheduling conflicts, we had to do the 5th sign another day. And in theory, this will help raise money for the restoration of the buildings and the upkeep of the buildings. As part of it, this is like supposed to be a walking tour for if you come to Church Street and just stumble upon the signs. Alternatively, they're put, because of the money I saved them from not needing to by contractors. They're also putting pamphlets in the various visitor centers around the state about this project. And also there is going to be like a festival thing on July 20th. That's going to be like food vendors and like the buildings will be open to like, tour in. So, yeah. And that's basically the project.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have one question. So how did you come up with the idea for this project?
So I didn't really come up with the idea. So I spoke to Clint Buxton and he basically said, contact those are what the signs will have on them
Oh, cool.
eventually. But I spoke to Clint Buxton and he basically said, speak to the various organizations around the city and I asked them to shoot ideas to you and bounce ideas back to them. And when I spoke to the Historical Society, they suggested this project because they had the grant coming in for it. And so I wouldn't need to fundraise for any of it or anything like that. And so I did that essentially.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, I will. Collin, I just want to congratulate you again. I guess I want to say St. Albans' gain is our loss is St. Albans' gain. What are your next plans at this point?
So I'm going to be working on a GED and then hopefully college.
Okay.
We'll see how that pans out.
Mary?
Yeah, Mary Houle, congratulations on your big effort. And I want to congratulate this woman who you might know very well. And this person over here, because you have to have a lot of support going forward with these. And your folks have to take you where you need to go. And I'm just so proud that you were able to complete this project. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Collin, congratulations and
A round of applause.
yeah. A thing, mom or dad, did you want to say anything?
Just that he has gained a lot of experience in working with a committee made up of committees at this point, that he didn't focus on that and what he told you, but he had a committee he worked with that included a representative from all 5 buildings and the city. So you can imagine how well that went. So there were a lot of meetings that he went and kind of helped push things along in terms of getting the signs, getting the information part ready. So.
And just wanted to highlight one of Collin's themes when he was working on developing a project to be done in St. Albans, despite being a member of Troop 23 here in Richmond, was that he wanted to really highlight the bond of scouts. No matter where they were, they could work together and achieve something of value. Because quite often we compete with each other, you know, Richmond versus Essex versus Colchester at our camporees, at our various scouting events. It's all friendly, but rarely do we get an opportunity as troops to come together and work in such a project like this. And Collin not only worked with the committee of committees, but he worked with the committee of 2 scout troops, which is just about as interesting as trying to herd cats.
Well, thank you both for coming. Thank you, Collin. Again, well done, and good luck with everything. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our second agenda item is Keith Oborne, our new Chief of Planning and Zoning. We appointed him to one of the offices we need to appoint him to last time, and now we have another thing to appoint him to. So Josh, you want to tell us about this one?
Sure. So this is for the acting zoning administrative officer position, and essentially this allows Keith to fill in when our zoning administrative officer is out of the office for multiple days, say on vacation or in sort of an illness or anything. He was nominated by the planning commission for this role. Our previous planner served in this role as well, and now it's for the select board to consider for approval.
Any questions?
So I move to appoint Director of Planning and Zoning Keith Osborne as the acting zoning administrative officer.
Oborne.
Oborne. This is David, I'll second.
Excuse me, Oborne.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford and a second from David Sander, moving to appoint Director of Planning and Zoning Keith Oborne as the acting zoning administrative officer. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, our next agenda item is the Radiate Art Crawl. For those of you who are not familiar with it, this is an event that the Radiate Art Center has been holding annually. I have a whole photo album of pictures from last year's event. My wife and I attended. It was great fun. There was a lot of interesting art, a lot of stuff prepared by the participants in the Radiate Art Center. And they have an ask for us that we authorize them to hold this year's event. Again, here at the town center campus, meaning the parking lot, the ground, on Sunday, September 24th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Rebecca, who would normally be here as director of Radiate to talk about it, was not able to be with us tonight, but Judy Bush is. Judy, would you like to tell us a little bit about this?
I'm really just here to answer any questions you have, but it'd be the same pretty much as last year. And so I guess I'm here to answer questions if you have any.
Anyone have any questions about the Radiate Art Hub?
Seems like a great event. I move to approve the Radiate Art Crawl to be held at the town center campus on Sunday, September 24th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
This is David, I'll second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your, oh, actually, sorry, restate. We have a motion from Jeff Ford and a second from David Sander to approve the Radiate Art Crawl to be held at the town center campus on Sunday, September 24th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay. Our next.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Judy. Sorry.
Thank you, Judy.
Our next agenda item is a follow-up from an item that was brought up 2 or 3 meetings ago. Town resident Nick
Ponzio.
Ponzio. Sorry, I was about to tell everyone that my wife's ex-boyfriend had done it because he's Nick Pilato, but that is not the case. Brought to us a resolution essentially centered on the idea that all residents of Richmond who make use of our town roads should be aware of the law and policies relating to sharing of the roads. And we discussed it for a bit, and we started to make a lot of wordsmithing And at the end of the day, we decided to table it for the moment and put it more into the traditional form that we usually see, which is a whole bunch of whereases followed by a therefore. The original one was a whole bunch of one whereas and a whole bunch of therefores. And so I took the liberty of redrafting it in that form. And
Got it. I'm getting it. I'm getting it. Give me a second.
yeah,
Sorry, it's coming.
I'll bring it up. This is, go ahead, Jeff.
So how about if I move it and then we can discuss it, maybe read
Well,
it?
let's at least get it on the screen first and then. Okay, so Jeff would like to go ahead and make the motion. So Jeff, go ahead.
I'll have it up here a second ago. I move to approve the non-binding resolution of safe sharing of the road.
I'll second, Lisa.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford to approve the non-binding resolution of safe sharing of the road and a second by Lisa Miller. So let's talk about the resolution a little bit. This is not meant to be a final form. This was an attempt on my part to add the relevant state laws where appropriate so that, you know, people could actually say, oh, that's where it says that. So just starting at the top, we have a whereas that sharing of the roadways is a good idea. We have a whereas that notes that drivers are required under state law to give vulnerable parties 4 feet of space when passing, and that drivers not pass by crossing over the center line unless the left lane is free of oncoming traffic. We have a whereas it says that, just making this very clear, requires that only vehicles shall only pass vulnerable users by crossing to the left lane when the left lane is clearly open. Then, whereas based on the previous two, drivers should not attempt to pass cyclists, pedestrians, and other vulnerable users until it is possible to safely pass with a minimum of 4 feet of space. Now, altogether, those previous three are meant to address the situation where you have a pedestrian or cyclist and you have cars coming on, you have car coming behind, and the car passing gives them just enough room that they don't hit the oncoming cars and no more. Essentially, what state law requires is that if you have a vulnerable user on the right side of, on the shoulder, perhaps, and you want to go past them, but you cannot get into the left lane safely, then you should not pass. You should wait until it is safe to pass. And if that means coming to a complete stop on the road, and that's what you do. That's not me saying this is, so this is state law. And if you have any questions about the state law, the statutes are quoted there. Couple other things. Whereas, next, pedestrians walk on the left side of the roadway facing traffic when practicable and when no sidewalks are available. So you're facing traffic. Whereas cyclists should operate on the right-hand side of the road no more than 2 abreast. This is a question that comes up a lot because we've seen people driving, pedaling cyclists 4 across, taking up the whole lane. Now, cyclists are entitled to use the right-hand lane, but they are not under state law to use
The whole lane.
not the whole lane and not more than 2 abreast. The law actually says no more than 2 abreast. Scrolling on down. This is a reminder that cyclists do have regulations to be visible. Cyclists under state law should not operate a bicycle from 1/2 hour after sunset until 1/2 hour after sunrise without a clearly visible white light on the front. And you have to have a red light or reflective rear facing materials or reflectors on the rear. You have to be able to make yourself seen. There's no state law that says pedestrians have to coat themselves from head to toe in bright aluminum foil, but common sense dictates that pedestrians walking along the shoulders or sides of roadways during the period from dusk until dawn dress in light or bright colors with reflectors and or lights, the better to be seen. This is meant to address the people who after dusk are out there in their black clothing from head to toe. And then here's ultimately the therefore, the result, that all residents and visitors to the town of Richmond shall operate on town roadways with due care for the rights and safety of other users, whether driving a vehicle, walking, riding a bicycle, or otherwise making use of the road, and shall obey all relevant Vermont state statutes. So that is a draft. The select board is open to amend it as they would like. Jeff?
Jay, I think you captured it well. I would like to ask Nick Ponzio, he's on the line here. I'd like to ask him if this fulfills what his original intent was.
Sure. Nick?
It does. Thanks, Jeff. And thank you, Jay, for all the work you did on this. I think it's a real good summary of what we're looking for, and I appreciate that.
Okay. Anybody else on the select board have a comment?
I like how it's balanced. It states Vermont state law, but it also balances common sense expectations. I'm going to preface what I'm about to say by saying the vast majority of pedestrians and cyclists are respectful. However, I have come across the occasional cyclist or pedestrian who hears me coming and purposefully moves into the lane, making a point of blocking traffic when there's a 4-foot shoulder and they're riding a foot to the right of the yellow line. So I like that it's respecting common sense and courtesy on both sides. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Since this is non-binding, it doesn't need to be, say, suspended for any special activities on a road.
This is essentially us just calling attention to all town residents,
What everybody should know.
what everybody should know.
It's Nick, 2 questions. Is Nick a town resident? And secondly, when he said this is what we were trying to do, who is he representing?
I am. I live on Cochrane Road at the Jonesville neighborhood of Cochrane Road. I lead a group run on Sundays, although it's been on hiatus for the last month or so. But so I'm actually a runner, not a cyclist, but do enjoy using the roadways of Richmond. And so I appreciate that the select board is willing to continue to talk about this issue and bring awareness to the state laws and common sense.
Nick, does your organization have a name?
I am a member of the GMAA, the Green Mountain Athletic Association running club that puts on a race here in Richmond. That was talked about a few meetings ago, the Round Church Women's Run. So I serve on the board of that group, though here this was more just because I use Cochrane Road a lot for my own recreation and was concerned about the attitudes that were voiced on the Front Porch Forum about that the roadways seem to be mainly for vehicles, and that pedestrians should always be expected to yield to the vehicles. I just wanted to be clear that there are state laws around the safe sharing of the roadways, and as Jay laid out here very well.
Okay. Alan?
I just want to voice my support for this, and I do want to point out that since I use a bicycle for transportation, the biggest problem that I see is drivers forcing around where they don't have room to pass, crossing the line in the face of oncoming traffic, and so forth. I mean, otherwise, I stay as far to the right as possible. I will actually pull off into driveways to let trailers and stuff get around me safely. But there are times when taking the lane to prevent people from passing unsafely seems like the most civil thing to do. And I don't know how to solve that particular dilemma. Anyway, I think that this is very well written, and I strongly support it.
Okay. I'm going to jump in. I realize that there is one change that needs to be made, which is in the whereas, the one that you can currently see there. The word or running, the phrase or running should be put there with walking, because otherwise this reads as though runners can do whatever the heck they want. So whereas common sense dictates that pedestrians walking or running. Okay, looking around the room, anybody else? Oh, Susan, please do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and Alan knows this, he may be able to speak better than me, but the Transportation Committee has assigned a subcommittee for the Share the Road project, basically, where the subcommittee is going to be looking at ways to basically advertise what this resolution says.
Right. Francis Churchill brought the idea of such a campaign forward. I believe the Transportation Committee and Francis are working on that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Jeff.
I support that notion. I really appreciate the Transportation Committee picking this up. I was down on the Cape this past week and I rode my bike a lot down there. And one of the signs I saw in particular locations was cyclists may claim the lane in certain locations. There are places like on the straightaway. It's not necessary. But on the curvy locations it is. I notice it a lot on my road. I'm on the Heinsberg Road and there's a blind curve that's, you have to be careful. Alan, I'm sure you must be careful about, you can claim the lane, but it doesn't do you any good if you do it on a blind curve and, a tractor trailer is coming around the corner. But there are times, I've been on a bridge when there isn't just, there's, a bridge in Richmond where there just is no room for other cars, claim the lane. And when I get off the bridge, the car's all upset that I slowed people down.
Right. And so that's kind of addressed by the very last, now they're be it resolved, is that, the due care for the rights and safety of other users. Jeff and others are perfectly correct. There are times, and state law states this in a variety of places, that cyclists are not by law required to hang to the shoulder. They are entitled to use the road, but they have to use common sense. That's the no two abreast. And I do want to emphasize also that, this is just to put in writing something that we're going to be moving forward, that educational campaign. And I think things like claim the lane, this is something that, we could add it as a whereas here, or we could just
let the Transportation Committee try to figure it out.
Right.
And how to promote it.
Okay, is there any other comment before? We've already got the motion on the floor. Okay, again, to state the motion was to approve the non-binding resolution of safe sharing on the road. It was moved by Jeff Ford and seconded by Lisa Miller. Seeing no further discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye.
And Jay, aye.
What are you talking?
Okay.
No, actually, two bridge.
Our next item relates to the July 4th Parade and Fireworks Committee. So a little bit of background, I am on that committee. Historically, the Parade and Fireworks Committee was essentially a group of very wonderful people, but mostly friends and family who have been doing this for close to 30 years. And they received the funding for the event was essentially coin drops. And this was a big burden to put on a big event and take the fireworks with a wing and a prayer and what you can raise from a coin drop. So sometime back, the town agreed to move the Parade and Fireworks Committee a little bit more into the traditional committee structure. And the Parade and Fireworks Committee essentially gave to the town their assets. The money that they had on account, and they also gave us the equipment. And in return, the town agreed to pay in full for the fireworks. The fireworks, we needed to pay for them in advance because this year there is a limited number of pyrotechnicians out there. And if we wanted to have an event at all, we had to strike all the iron in the fire. When I refer to the assets, that was how I spent my Saturday. We have a number of trailers. We have a trailer, actually 2 trailers and a shed out back at the highway department. One of the trailers contains several what they call fryolators for making fried dough or French fries. And then they're sitting in a trailer that would be towed down to the green and used. We have a whole bunch of bins of this, that, and the other. A mist to hook up to a garden hose mitt. So all this stuff. The town now owns all that. And we inventoried it on Saturday. We threw a bunch of stuff out that wasn't in good condition because it's been since 2019 that they did all this. And the next step is to pressure wash it all because it needs it. And then what we were considering doing was auctioning off the fry later equipment unless the town wants to get back to making French fries. This year's July 4th plan is, instead of the July 4th committee staffing concession stands on their own to get out of that line of business, and instead to recruit nonprofits and for-profit ventures to set up essentially food trucks and stuff. And so, there's no need to own all that stuff anymore. However, to get back to the point of the item on the agenda, the Parade and Fireworks Committee, along with the fire department, is under statute, under town ordinance, allowed to do 2 coin drops per year. No other group is currently listed in ordinances being able to do this. We have a coin drop, and I think we have to, yes, it's the next agenda item that we tentatively have scheduled for May 27th. However, there was a question about, well, besides the coin drop, can we just go in Front Porch Forum and say, if you have the goodness of your heart would like to donate money toward the event, and you didn't happen to be driving through downtown Richmond on the day, can you donate money? And so we checked with our town auditor, and he advised that the best way to be able to accept that money, because again, this is money that was going to the town. This is no longer money going to the Parade and Fireworks Committee checking account. In order to be able to accept that money, the best way would be to establish a reserve fund, similar to some of the other reserve funds we've got, like the tennis fund, which we do have one of. It has $300 asset.
Yeah.
So that legally people can donate the money. The money would not flow through the Parade and Fireworks Committee's hand. Duncan Wardwell will be in charge of setting the form up to take donations, and then it would be filed into a fund along with any other money would be filed into a fund. And that money would be used for expenses other than the fireworks themselves. If you're wondering what those might be, stage rental for this year's musical event, paying honoraria to the musicians, paying for materials, paying for, in some cases, things like trash removal. We are getting a lot of that stuff donated, but there is still some stuff we're gonna have to pay for. And so, to make a long story short, we have a motion to create a Parade and Fireworks Reserve Fund, which town or any deep-pocketed millionaires living in Indonesia can donate to, so that legally the town can hold that money. Question?
Actually like to come up and make a comment before you make the motion and move forward. Having served on the Fireworks and Parade Committee, having ran the snack shack there for making many years of dough. I was one who was strongly pushing for it to just be no longer a fundraising piece, and that the town actually pay for the fireworks and maybe have a small budget. I'll speak on the coin drop later, but as far as the actual reserves go, I think it should be a budgeted item annually, and that we should not set aside reserves, and that we should not start to create all these little funds like the tennis fund that never went anywhere. I think it dilutes and makes confusion for future select board members and for people trying to understand what the reserve is for and how it's supposed to be used and what can we use it for. I would just as soon see a budgeted tax item that is for fireworks and some minor budget for $1,000, $1,500, because they should be charging the vendors that are coming a fee, and that fee should generate enough revenue to pay for what they need that they didn't get donated. So in the end, the goal was to have it just be the fireworks that was budgeted, and the miscellaneous other things were either to be donated or fees charged to the different people that were coming. So I strongly recommend that you not create yet another reserve of an unknown how to use, when to use, and just continue on in the path of the budgeted line item for fireworks and all the other things that want to be done. You have a revenue source, because when they generate and write their check for sorry, it's late, didn't have dinner. When they write their check for being a vendor at the 4th of July, where is that revenue going?
That would go into the fund.
Right? It doesn't have to go into the reserve. It should be how much they're able to spend is exactly how much they're bringing in the revenue.
But nonetheless, we need the fund to legally be able to hold that money that comes in and keep it legally distinct from the town's other numbers. That would be the goal, so that we don't want to drop the money into the town's checking account and then have to say, well, gee, how much was it? Having a fund that we can put the money into would help keep the money legally distinct. And that's why we ask that.
Then we're gonna have to do that across the board with a bunch of other areas in this town, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think the fact that we put all of our other money into the general fund and then have a unassigned amount rolling forward, I think the fireworks money should be the same way.
Okay, again, to repeat, this is not the fireworks money necessarily. The fireworks has already been paid for by the town. This would be a fund to keep income raised by charging vendors, nonprofit and profit for the right to have food trucks and to take donations and have places to put the coin drop. Believe it or not, there are expenses for the July 4th event besides the fireworks. And this would give us a place to put any money that comes in from donations, from sales of the friolators, from money from the coin drop, and keep that money legally distinct. And as a member of the committee, I may be biased, but I would like to see us have a place to do that so that when we go out, there was a question, actually, we had to go to our auditor and say, legally, can the town just go out and start soliciting donations for an event? And the auditor said it would be cleaner legally if we had a fund to put that money directly into. Questions from the board?
So I'd actually like to, I hear Kara's concern and I understand all of the challenges it might be to, have separate funds for separate different things. And once it's in there, it can't come out unless it goes for that particular thing, whatever it is. Is Connie on, and could she speak to whether or not this would be problematic for her to keep track of? So either way, is she here?
Don't think she's on, but she and I talked about this, and because it was a question Jay raised about how do we do the coin drops, we reached out to our auditor. And as Jay said, that was his advice, was that the best way to do a fundraiser is to have a reserve fund that it would then go into, and that actually, I think, helps us keep track of it a little bit better. I think it's different than, like, say, creating a reserve fund for police ticket revenue, because we're not getting a fundraiser for people who say, oh, I didn't get a speeding ticket, but I want to give you money anyway. I think going forward, right now, we don't have an expense line that has enough money into it to pay additional fees, nor do we have a revenue line that's specifically set up for this. So this is a fund that will be established by the select board. It could also be unestablished by the select board. You could take the money out, do other things with it at your own political peril. It's not like it's tied to a statute that says it can't be used for anything else, like reserve money for highway, for instance. You can only be on by that, or something that's established by the voters. So I think that if you get to this time next year, or we get through the budget process and we say, we'd rather handle this through an expense account, but we do want to maybe keep a reserve fund open for fundraising opportunities. There's some ability to move the budget around and move the money.
I have a little bit of a problem with the term reserve in that I think of reserve for kind of big ticket items. Fire trucks, dump trucks, sidewalks, town center building, they're kind of big ticket items, and the relative scale of this, I think we approved $13,000 for the fireworks. And that'd probably be the biggest contribution that will be made into this fund. And then, the coin.
Well, that money's already been spent.
Yeah, and the coin drops are like, about $4,000 or $5,000 or $5,000 a stretch. So, I have to say, I'm kind of in Kara's camp on this. Little funds seem difficult to administer, but that's just me. I'm just one vote.
Well, I think it's a fallacy to say that creation of one fund requires us to create a whole bunch of other funds. I don't see that. This is kind of a sui generis situation in that we are bringing this group into the town structure, but we are still not looking to taxpayers to pay for whatever the committee gets up to. But we would still like to have an easy, financially clean way of taking donations from those who would like to make them.
Thank you. Katie's hand is up.
Oh, Katie, go ahead.
Hold on, let me see if I can figure out my camera here. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Oh boy, start video. Okay, hi, coming at you from a kitchen. Steph Hartsfield reached out to me maybe 6 weeks ago to ask, since I was involved in the building of the town website, to ask me if I knew if there was an easy way for us to add a donation button to the website, which is part of where this all came from. Because I know that a lot of people, myself included, don't carry a ton of cash anymore. And so people were reaching out to her as somebody who's been involved with the Recreation Committee and the 4th of July Committee to say, hey, I would like to be able to make donations to this, but often when there's the coin drop, I can't make a donation because I don't have any money. Do you think that, like other towns, like our library, we could add a donation button? And I think she worked with Duncan and she worked with Connie because it wasn't going to be an easy accounting solve. And Connie made it clear that in order, which is I think what made us end up at our auditor, Connie made it clear that it would not be a clean accounting process. And so it sounds like Duncan and Josh and the auditor worked together to come up with this solution so that we can have a place where people can donate to something very specific, which, to Kara's concern, I don't necessarily think that it will end up creating a bunch of little funds because we don't have that many things to which people in town want to donate. The keeping track, though, of reserve funds, I mean, I know that there's something that came up when I was on the board that we're like, what the heck is this? But hopefully, because now we are, all of our records all of our records moving forward are sort of computerized, that there would be a way to leave ourselves a notation of where this whole thing came from. So that would be my advice, is to find a way to notate what this thing is and how it got created and why. So that's what I know about why we have ended up where we are.
Thank you very much, Katie. That's helpful. Denise.
If you do this, I think I would maybe change the name instead of parade and fireworks, maybe July 4th. So if you do have to rent equipment, you're not, oh, it's not for the parade and it's not for the fireworks, it's for the music. Yeah. So maybe, mark it July 4th event or something. So it doesn't tie your hands or how you can use the funds.
And we could certainly, the motion could, which has not yet been made, could be made. I'm to say I move to create the July 4th fund, reserve fund, which will be used to pay for expenditures related to language.
Yep.
Jay, can I speak one more time?
Sure.
My feeling is we're just out of order with the agenda items because it goes to the coin drop is the whole reason for having to set up, taking donations is the reason for setting up the reserve. Mm-hmm. The coin drop was discussed when it went in front of the select board that we were no longer going to have to do the coin drop by having it be a expense item on the budget, and that fundraising for it all changed because they used to have their own checkbook. They never reported any financials to you. It was all not a clear, transparent way of doing things. It was the only group of volunteers that had to raise money to spend money on the town's behalf. It was the only checkbook that wasn't audited, but with the town's name on it. There was a lot of issues there. So I strongly pushed to do away with that fundraising aspect, to have it be a clear, transparent line item of how much money was going to be spent on that. I do think there will be other projects that people will come forward with, and I will tell you right now, I will be one of them who will come forward with wanting the town to be able to raise money for a specific thing in town that I think we need. And I would want to have the same situation taken in that case. So my point is the fundraising side of things, there's very clear information that you need. And when you take donations, it's just like taking donations for a nonprofit, then you have to have background checks on anybody handling the money. You have a lot more things that you have to do when taking donations. And I don't know if that piece of the puzzle you've resolved or looked into as well. So anybody dealing with the money, a town official should be the one counting the money. There's a lot of aspects for that. Right. So that was my point with coming forward and saying, please go ahead and pay for this. Don't make the fireworks group being the only one in town that has to raise money. Stop having to do that. Let somebody else, let another nonprofit raise that money. I mean, we pay for a lot of things. We have 4 police cars sitting in the parking lot that we paid for.
Okay, to respond to Kara's point, I do not think that causing administrative difficulties for the Parade and Fireworks Committee is the way to go. We keep making reference to, we were going to move the cost of this to town budget. That was the fireworks. That was only the fireworks. I'll give you an example. We have no police that we can ask to staff the event this year. We don't have them. Guess what? We still need them. They have to be paid for. I've got a call outstanding to a couple of the security firms to do the day of the event, security for the parade, the directing traffic. Those cost money. I could go for quite a while for things that are going to cost money that are not the fireworks. Now, we could put this on the town budget and fund it directly out of taxes. Or we can pay for the fireworks as we've already done using taxes, and then leave it up to townspeople to decide. This is essentially an optional tax, much like people who file their Vermont taxes have the option to contribute $5 or $10 to the Vermont Fish, Game and Wildlife Fund, except it wouldn't be going through your tax return. Now, to the point about who would be administering this would not be administered by Sue Lennon or Amanda Cobb or any of the people who are currently on the fireworks parade and fireworks committee. It would be administered essentially by Duncan. Duncan would be the one working with the money. It would be going into the town books through ISMCONY. There would not be a need to background check some rando, because that rando who hypothetically exists isn't touching the money. The money is going through the town website, through a form that Duncan will be setting up once we have permission to do this, if we have that permission, and going into the town coffers. When we were talking earlier at the Water and Sewer Committee about, is it right to include in your walking around money that's been set aside for a particular purpose? By having it in a fund, it avoids the possibility that at some point somebody says, this is our money that we have, and somebody else forgets, actually, no, that's set aside for the parade and fireworks. I know it's always an issue. NAMI Vermont, National Alliance of Mental Illness Vermont, which I have often worked with, has a bunch of money that is in funds that they can never spend because we don't know the purposes for those funds have ceased to be necessary. But there's nothing legally they can do because the people who donate the money are dead. This is not that situation. This is not some obscure fund where in 2050 people look up and go, what the heck was this? I think having a July 4th fund, it's not a real head scratcher what that's for. June?
So I'm just wondering, rather than creating another fund, why you couldn't continue to put this money in the recreation account and code it as money to be used for July 4th? Because I believe, I don't know, the NEMRIC system is a little bit confusing, but I just feel like if it's in the recreation line and by chance there is no parade, down the road, you can still use it for recreation.
I'm comfortable with the answers that you've come up with. And so I'd like to move the motion if I can. I move to create the July 4th fund.
Reserve.
Do I have to say reserve?
Yes, I have to say reserve.
I'm not sure that the word reserve is a make or break. If you're uncomfortable with reserve, I want to call it a fund that's established by the select board. I think that
I like the term fund better.
I think that gets the same end.
Okay.
I move to create the July 4th fund, which will be used to pay for expenditures related to the Richmond July 4th celebration.
And we have a motion from Jeff Ford and a second by David Sander. The motion is to create the July 4th fund, which will be used to pay for expenditures related to the Richmond July 4th celebration. Hey, Lisa?
I've got a comment that's sort of related, but I've never seen the town's fireworks display.
What?
Well, I spend it in my basement with ear plugs in because every year when that goes off, I take my dog down there who's scared to hell of those things. And I feel pretty emotional about this, but you can tell it hurts. It physically hurts my ears. And I'm not putting a penny of my taxes into buying something that hurts me like that. So do what you want with that, but I'm voting no on anything that has to do with the town and fireworks.
But this money is not the fireworks. Fireworks, this is for everything except the fireworks.
if that's explicitly clear, then I don't have an objection.
Right, we've.
I still have a complete objection. I'll go lay down in front of the fireworks if that would help. But I don't really.
No, and I understand what you're saying, because every year on Front Porch Forum, starting 4 to 6 weeks before the event, people are literally begging that we come up with a way around this. And then
There are silent fireworks.
Mhm.
Now, people that like the noise aren't going to be very satisfied with that. I would be happy with it. I could actually see a fireworks display for the first time in about 20 years. But that's just an idea.
This is fried dough, cotton candy and a parade.
Mhm.
and security and stuff like that. Any other comments? Everybody, by the way, I want to state, everybody here, I'm grateful that we've kept it civil and that we've been able to disagree. And if this fails, it fails, but I'm hoping it doesn't.
It's not there.
Well, you never know. We don't know until, just like the Boston Bruins, you don't know until you play the game.
And then over till it's over.
Is that a yogiism?
Well, if you follow hockey, the Bruins just, oh boy. Anyway.
Too soon, Jay, too soon.
Okay, so you've heard the motion. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, abstain?
Jeff, I.
Ooh, I'm the decision maker. David,
And Jay and I. But Lisa, I want to validate what you're saying, because I do have concerns about that. I'm an animal lover, and I have known people, I've seen people with their dogs, the dog won't come out, won't go for a walk for a month after the fireworks.
That's, yeah, it's lingering and it's scary.
Yeah, and if there is a way that we can do quieter fireworks, I think that's something that could be looked at.
Jay, I'm 53 years old. I love fireworks, but it angers me and saddens me to no end that every year people bring their dogs to the fireworks display.
That's a great point. Okay. Our next agenda item is related to this. It is to legally allow the July 4th committee, the Parade and Fireworks Committee, to have a coin drop. The coin drop does annually raise somewhere in the order of $4,000 if it's good weather. I volunteered for it last year. I had a great time talking to people as they came through. And it's kind of a tradition. We are legally allowed to have two, but there was a little bit of misinformation. Somebody was telling the committee they could only have one. And given that they scheduled it for too close to July 4th, to have a second one in there. But this is going to be the only coin drop that we have on. The coin drop would be held at the intersection of Bridge Street and Main Street and Jericho Road from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, May 27th. Does anybody have any questions about the coin drop or any other comments relating to it?
My memory is admittedly faulty, but I thought the town was restricted to 2 coin drops per year.
No.
And historically, one was for the fire department and one was for the.
Yeah, I can show you. That's a good point. It actually is in our ordinance that it specifically says
I got it, Jay.
you got it 2 for each of those groups.
Oh, okay.
And the 2006 version of the ordinance, it did say only one, but the 2016 versions
Right here.
does explicitly say 2 coin drops per year per organization.
Now that you say that, I think I remember that we changed that to be inclusive.
Yeah.
So I move to approve the coin drop to be held by the, I'm going to call it 4th of July committee on Saturday, May 27th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the traffic signal on Bridge Street.
I'll second that.
Jay, just my question, will you be making sure that you do all the background checks? But that's the people I was talking about handling the money. I wasn't talking about Duncan doing the online stuff. And Connie, I was talking about the coin drops and how you properly handle the funds for that, and that you will be there or somebody representing the town will be there. That was all.
Okay, I will be there the
Thank you.
entire time.
Great. I had a great time doing it last year.
Yeah, we did. What, you dressed up in a ball gown, right?
That's Princess Di.
Princess Di. I dressed, and Marshall Paulson. You can probably imagine how he dressed, right? The full Uncle Sam outfit. So if you have an urge that you don't feel gets satisfied with once a year for Halloween, and you want to come out and help us, if you've got, I don't know, a giant beaver outfit in the basement, come on down. We'll
I
be
think
happy
this
to
is
help
a
you.
great Vermont tradition. You go anywhere in the state, over the summertime, at one time or another, you'll hit a coin drop.
Yeah.
So has it been moved yet?
Yes, it is.
Why? I'm sorry, who moved it in his second?
I moved it.
And who seconded it?
Did I second that?
Not David did.
Oh, yeah, I think we moved
You
it.
two are
If I
involved.
didn't, I second that. How's that?
You did.
Close enough.
Okay, so who made the motion?
David made a
Okay.
motion.
Probably get it written down.
Whatever that is, yes.
So we have a motion from David Sander, seconded by Jeff Ford, to approve the coin, to move to approve the coin drop to be held at the parade, by the Parade and Fireworks / July 4th committee on Saturday, May 27th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the traffic signal on Bridge Street. Please state your name and your house. Go ahead.
Do we know what the condition of Route 2 is going to be?
We have asked, have you heard back?
Sidewalks and so forth.
We do know, we've got questions outstanding to them, and we've invited the project rep from the state to come speak to us at a future meeting. Have they accepted that?
I know they're coming to the next meeting to talk about the bridge project. I don't know. I haven't confirmed if they're going to come about Route 2, but they copied their project manager about what they think their condition will be on July 4th, knowing that they could impact the parade. Are you asking about the July 4th or the coin drop date?
The coin drop. I mean, if it's
They
right
don't work
there.
on Saturday.
They don't work on Saturday, and that part of the town, they were gonna work at night.
Yeah.
And so, and they've been parking their equipment. They're not gonna park their
I'll
equipment,
move slower to drop the coins.
Right. but they're not gonna park their equipment on one half of Main Street and go home. They have a place to park it. And so the road may be gravel, it may be bare slab,
Don't drop your money.
it may be milled, but the road will be open in both directions.
Make sure Mark will have some shocks on those stilts.
As long as
He
the
did do
roads,
the stilts last year, I was sad.
as long as the road's rough enough to rattle the change out of the cars.
Good idea. Right fast.
Okay,
So Josh, this is off topic, but sort of related because we're talking about Route 2 on the way down tonight. I noticed one of the two traffic lights, the green light headed westbound by the interchange on 117. It's out. If you could send me transit note.
Just the green light?
There are two traffic lights. The
Yeah,
green
that
light on
face-
the right one
The
is
face
out.
west.
Okay.
Okay, green light went. Thank
So-
you.
let's go ahead and vote on this. You've heard the motion. Please state your name on your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. Okay, so any other lights that are out, anybody wants to make? Okay, our next agenda item is the Mary Houle item. This is consideration of creating a town center assistant maintenance assistant, I think we would say, and flower bed.
Bed. Says
Bed.
bed.
You're right, that's flower bed maintenance position.
Jeez.
And Josh, I'm gonna leave this one to you. Can you talk about this?
Sure, I can start and Mary may have some additional information. So this did come from Mary. As many of you know, for many years, Mary has attended to the flower beds around the town center. This year being no exception, she's planting flowers around the curb line as well. She takes a lot of care and pride in planting those flowers and tending to the flower beds throughout the entire summer season. And she's also jumped in at times and said, well, nobody's cleaning the entryway to the town center, and let me get in there and clean that as well. And a few other things. We do have a town center cleaner, but their scope of work is more offices, some common space, but not all. So Mary came to me with the idea of, well, maybe we create a paid position that would spend about roughly 5 hours a week, a little more in the summer, a little less in the winter time, to attend to the flower beds here at the town center and some of these other jobs that aren't really getting attended to and aren't really covered by any one person in particular. So she came to me with a draft job description. We looked at that, worked it through, thought that it looked good, looked at a potential pay range. So the question tonight is, would the select board like to create that position? It's not budgeted for this year or next year, so we would be overspending the budget. It would probably be about $5,000 or $6,000 per year, including wages and associated taxes. And if so, the job doesn't just go to Mary, we would go through a process as you have to with any new job to post it and accept applicants and make a decision on who gets the job, although Mary's got quite a bit of experience in this field.
Although I would like to say, because of, this is a position and we would have to consider, applicants. If anybody does apply besides Mary, what we've got planned is a cage match.
You bet you.
Okay, Mary, why don't you come up and tell us a little bit more about your vision?
Hi there. Thank you. It's Mary Houle. Penny kind of echoed justification for this job last week or 2 weeks ago when she was talking about, you know, certain things that aren't done. Like today I came in to drop off a letter and I noticed that someone had pitched a log, I mean, a real log, half a tree out here and all the bark was scattered all over. So the log was moved over here and the bark was, anyway.
Down last night.
Where did it blow down from though?
The trees were.
Could have been from my yard.
Okay.
I mean, the wind was strong.
Dreamer.
I had a deck chair end up. I was like, how did the wind
Okay,
get
deck chair.
behind and then move?
Nobody was in it.
My
Nobody
son
was in
left
it.
his
But it was
his car and I found his floor mats in the driveway.
Anyway, I joked for my.
I love your
the wind was
yarn.
great. The wind was
Anyway,
great.
I'm not gonna be able to do this forever, and to create a position that, you know, it'd be nice on, you know, the end of things when I'm finishing up doing the work over here, that it is a paid position and that it's established. And this is the line of, and again, like Josh said, there are certain things that are not done by the person who's doing the cleaning, and I would never want that job, cleaning offices. But there are certain things that are beyond, I think you may all have a copy of the job description, but there's certain things like if you came up here in the daytime and you just looked down the hallway, you could see that there's fingerprints all over the tables and at least a few times a week. Rather than, I'm not sure what the schedule is that the woman does who takes care of things now, but each room needs a little bit of in-between care. And that's one of the things that would be encompassed in this. The faucet out here in the hall, there's a washroom and a sink, and I turned the faucet on one day to water the plants, and the center gizmo, whatever it is, was leaking like a sieve. So that's one of the things that needs to be brought to someone else's attention. I mean, I'm not a plumber, but right now, currently, there's 2 lights out in the elevator. Third one goes out, it's gonna be dark in the elevator. So that's my justification for asking for it. And I have been so happy that I've received a lot of compliments on the new flower edition. And I just couldn't be happier the way it turned out. And so that was my justification. I did have some help. June helped format the position so that it would be formatted to what the town job descriptions look like. That's my story. Thank you.
Question, comment for Josh or for Mary?
Mary, I just want to thank you. It looks beautiful and this building should present what we want the town to look like, and it does hurt when I see things.
For anybody who drives into the parking lot, for anybody who drops their kids off or picks them up or uses the building, certainly beyond town employees and the folks from the town, but we do have a number of visitors that utilize the facility.
Okay, Lisa.
Would we consider making this a position that's reauthorized annually? Or should we? Not would we, but should we?
I'm open to that being a discussion.
I mean, Mary won't always be around. Maybe
That was
30
my
more
point in
years,
bringing it up.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. Mary is not allowed to ever.
Well,
Change,
there
yeah,
you go.
I won't
In that
change.
case, if you're
I think
indentured.
it's scarier.
Gotcha.
Institution.
But I'm thinking, you know, the town center grounds, however they look in the future after we're done trampling everything, you know, for construction, might be different. We may go through hard times where a little bit here and a little bit here has to give.
Yeah.
I hate to set something like this into stone when I'm not sure we can really back it up.
Okay.
So to reauthorize it every, let's say, March or early in the year.
It would be in the budget season.
Right.
Hmm.
And it's a good point because as the town center
Changes.
changes. Jeff, you were planning on using robots to clean, right?
Ooh, using what?
Robots.
Yeah, I love that. The Roombas, actually, I love Roombas. You should try a Roomba.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Mine got away.
The town center, you know, the latest draft of the site plan for the town center includes a lot more green space. It's interesting. They were able to find more green space and more parking.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, it's amazing. You know, I support this idea. In fact, I really, one of the things that the town center committee has talked about over the several years that it's been in existence is there is a need for some kind of facilities maintenance, something or other,
Mm.
and don't know exactly how to contract that out, I don't see in this job description changing light bulb. It'd be great to do that, but I think there does need to be somebody who pays attention to like when the faucet breaks. So it shouldn't be Pete. That
Yeah,
doesn't,
well, it shouldn't be Josh or Duncan or Linda either.
it should be somebody, and we could try to do, a staff person. I think this is a good experiment, to try to do a staff person, particularly for the landscape that Mary's done. I think that's really worthwhile. And we should think about, facilities management, in the future. I hope we get to it with the town center committee. We're going to be a little busy, but I hope we do. I had a couple of changes to the job description that I wanted to suggest. One of them is the last qualification. This included language of situations endangering personal safety. What does that mean? What situation would be?
Well, if there's a broken jar somewhere, broken glass, something like that, if there's a frayed wire, things that you would notice in your home that would be a hazard. You can't specifically say like if there's a broken jar, but just to draw attention to something like that. If there's a tripping hazard, like that log that was situated out here in the parking lot and the bark that was all over.
Yeah,
I can't identify it more.
I agree with all of that, but this is under a qualification. And so, it talks ability to work under varying weather conditions. I get that. And situations endangering personal safety. That's a little open-ended for me. I mean, I don't know.
I see. I can't identify it specifically.
So I don't, I mean, I would find that unusual.
It would be me working where the general public would see me. So maybe that's what it's supposed to cover. Well, yes, whatever.
The draft motion is not inclusive of the specific job description. We can create the position and leave the specific job description to be fleshed out.
Yeah.
June, go ahead.
Thank you. Mary brought this forward when I was on the select board, and I feel like it is a very valuable position. We have been very, very fortunate to have Mary dedicate so much time over the last, God knows how many years. And I think that there are things that others don't get to, and Josh shouldn't necessarily be sweeping the entryway. Like, we don't pay him to do that. So I think that this is a great first step in figuring out, what needs to be done, because it isn't getting done. And then as things change, moving forward with a potentially new town center, then you reevaluate at that point. And when it comes to like putting it in stone, no position is ever in stone. All employment is relevant, is going to be relevant to whatever the budget is. So I don't think you have to be concerned about creating a position that's absolutely going to be permanent, because budgets make the determination of what positions stay in place or added or deleted.
Okay, Katie.
All right, well, let's do this again. Let's figure this out. All right, here we go. Okay. I would also really like to thank Mary for all the work that she's already done at Town Center over the year. It was something that was evident to me when I was on the select board. And so I think that, I just want to thank her for the work that she's already done. I also totally agree that we should create this position as an official position, because as Mary has pointed out, she's not going to be able to or want to do it forever. What I would love to see, I guess I have two comments. I'm not convinced that in the long run, the master gardener position that this asks for should be tied to the taking care of and doing light cleaning in the town center. I think it's awesome that Mary is willing to do that. And I think she's willing to do it because she has so much personal care for that space and has spent so much time there. In the future, I don't know if we're going to be able to get a master gardener to do those things. So I think that that's just something that we should take into consideration. I would also love to see this role, the role of a town master gardener, actually expanded over time if this goes well. When I was on the board, I asked for sort of an inventory of all of the town-owned green spaces to be created so that we could see what it is that we are responsible for, that includes perennial plants that Pete didn't particularly have the time or the interest in caring for. He has been on record as saying that. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. And so I'd be interested in seeing this position expanded over time if it goes well, and if the person who is in the job is interested in seeing it expanded over time. But I think as climate change makes even bigger and bigger headway into our area, having somebody who is able to help us to accommodate climate change and guide us in how we use plants to help ameliorate changes would be super helpful to have on staff.
Well said, Katie.
Can I add one thing about
Sure.
the financing of this position? When the folks bid on the lawn care, grounds and maintenance, the budget for that was 50,000 and they picked up in the 30,000 range. So would that not be available for that position? Because it's kind of a branch of that tree.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be extra money, it's not necessarily
Well,
payroll
it's never
money.
extra money.
There'll be money,
But
that
it could be-
there'll be unexpended funds that we could use.
But I was wondering if that could be applied to
Yeah,
this, so
I think
that,
so.
you know, it would be something that might apply when
Right,
the
that's a-
position was available.
That's a
Okay,
$20,000 savings and this is a $6,000 expense. It makes
Yeah.
sense.
works for me. Okay, any more questions? Thank you.
Okay, just checking in. Lisa, did you have anything else?
No, I'm just trying to digest whether it should be reauthorized, regularly or let the budget flow however it flows and see if we have money left over for it. I mean, what June says is true. Sure, we don't have to reauthorize a budget item every year if it's up for the question. But should we? Somebody tell me.
Well, so what I would see it as is once we get to the budget process again this fall and to next town meeting, we would include this position in that part of the payroll budget. And then at that point, like we'd have with any budget discussion, like we've expanded hours for budget positions in the past or changed things in the past, and this could be part of that discussion and process.
Okay, I'm okay with it.
David, you have your draft or any other thoughts?
No, I think we should go ahead with it.
Okay, so can we have a motion?
I move to create the town center assistant maintenance and flower bed maintenance position to be placed as a grade 2 on the pay grid.
Okay, we have a motion from David. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second that.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Jeff Ford, to create the town center assistant maintenance and flower bed maintenance position to be placed as grade 2 on the pay grid. Please state your name and vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. Okay, earlier tonight, we made a decision to alter the order slightly of the agenda. We are going to move now to what had been item in the reappraisal process. I think I should leave that to Josh to summarize since Lisa is not
Sure.
with us.
Oh,
I know it does
sorry.
reference the information.
No,
on
no,
the
no,
town
no. I'll
website.
go there. Sorry, I was just looking to make sure I didn't have any other notes and I was like, it's not next on the agenda, clearly. So 1 second, let me just make sure I get to the right spot here. Well, I don't think I moved too much. Anyway, so the agenda item here is following up on the information that the assessor Lisa provided us with at last meeting. Really what I wanted to do was go ahead and show where on the town website this information can be found. So let me minimize this a bit here. So this information did get mailed to people, so everybody should have a hard copy of the mailing. If you start here at the town website, which is richmondbt.gov, go to departments, go to the listers, and you will find information from the property data cards reappraisal, which can be viewed here, reappraisal data and reappraisal data filter. Then there's information on the hearing process, the dates, the times, how to get in touch, how to make an appointment, what to do if you can't make an appointment, how to email for information or call for more information. And then information on the official grievance process and Lisa, the assessor's information at the bottom.
Before we go to Karen, any questions or comments from the board?
I was pleased to get it. It was shocking numbers, but
Yeah.
A lot of people are surprised.
interesting information. I hope, the numbers went up proportionally for everybody.
Right, and to emphasize something that's been emphasized before, the increase in your appraisal may not result in an increase in your taxes at all. You might proportionally might have owing less. Because the amount of money to be raised for the budget has not changed. It's simply the grand list expands and the rate goes down to achieve the same result. Karen?
Thank you, Jeff. Carol Bounty. And yes, your town taxes might not go up, but don't forget your state tax is the majority of your tax bill. So if you have a percentage increase, your taxes are going up in all likelihood. First of all, I want to say thank you for pushing the appraisers to copy the detail cards and have them available. Because as you can see, when Josh goes online and you click into the card information, all you're seeing is the cover sheet of your card. You're not seeing the detail card that they have now printed all of them and have them as copies in the vault that Linda has access to. So thank you for pushing them to do that. Thank you for also having them put the total grand list by Excel up on the website for everybody to see. What I'm upset about and want to be very clear with you about, and I'm disappointed, is I have asked for information that should be accessible and transparent to the public, such as the land schedules, the depreciation schedules, the neighborhood identifiers, the quality specifications. All of these are driving how they calculate the information. And if you want to appeal, you need to have some of that information. So they've spent 2 years to create this list that they've released to the public. And now we have 2 weeks before our meeting, or actually technically mine's on Monday, and I don't have the information I need for that meeting. So I'm very disappointed. We paid an organization. We didn't just pay Lisa. Lisa is the individual working in our offices, but a group of them or more than one person went to homes. This information is what drives their numbers. They should be able to print it out of their system and provide it to us. It has historically been in the grand list book. A land schedule is right there.
Here, I'm sorry, we're done. About your appeal, in your appeal process, will you be able to ask for that information and get it? I mean, does it?
You're supposed to have that information available for you, and you're supposed to present why you're appealing. Now, the first meeting on Monday is an informational meeting. It's
Okay.
not, so that's where you can go, but you shouldn't have from the informational meeting being provided the information that should be part of this book. It should have been part of this book to have the land schedule in here. It should have been information available to everybody and not just Kara.
They could easily have a website with that information searchable too.
It could be on our
Of course,
website,
yeah.
anybody could download the information. So that's where I'm disappointed, is that I asked for it last week and I still have nothing from them. I received, actually, it was Bruce who asked for it, my husband, because he's been on top of this. And he received an email today that was just blank.
Nice.
So
I mean, I saw that email. I didn't have time to follow up with Lisa today on that. I'm assuming that that was in the state that she didn't mean to send you a blank email. I'll follow up with her to make sure that she gets that to you and ask her about publishing it on the website. Very reasonable requests.
I appreciate that.
Can I add something before you leave the table? Mary Houle, meeting number 1, I agree, we should have all the information. And if we have all the information and it can be resolved at meeting 1, there's no need to go to a formal grievance.
Correct.
So that's why it's important to have that. My land grade shouldn't have changed between the last appraisal and this appraisal. There's been no change. If anything, it's been degraded because when the flood maps changed, more of my land is in flood zone. So if anything, my land grade should not have increased, it should have decreased. So that was not evident.
Yeah, and I don't want to go into individual things. Jeff, you're the one who said you hope it's a percentage. It is not. It is not. But I appreciate the sentiment that you hoped it was equitable.
Okay. Any comment from David, Lisa? Before we move to the audience?
So, is there any resolution to what Kara's concerns are? So what, how do we address those concerns? I don't know if I fully understand
Appraisal.
the types of documents.
Rachel.
But
The bottom line is you don't have the information for the public that should be transparent to the public. And as a select board member, you should be aware of that. You didn't need to know about the details of but it should be information that's available to the public.
so is that going to happen?
Yeah, I'll follow up with Lisa and ask her to put the land schedule on the website, and I was copying the email from Kara and Bruce to Lisa. I'll follow up with that to make sure they get answers.
Okay. Denise?
Denise Barnard, I totally agree with what Kara said. And as you all sit there, you are also members of the Board of Civil Authority. If this information had come in a timely manner, it cuts out a lot of work for our board, because if these things can happen and be settled when they go to the informational meeting and or the first meeting with Lisa or whoever sits on that board, it won't come to the Board of Civil Authority, and it may not go to the state of Vermont. So that is a huge chunk of information that is missing. I also had an issue when I received my report that I don't know if you're, the board, you were responsible for the layout, but when you look down through the appraisals, it never gave a location, an address, an actual address for Joe Smith, 3 Robbins Court. And I'm just hypothetically using that. If you knew like the BR codes, which some of us know those BR codes or whatever those codes are that sit on the Board of Civil Authority and or other people, but that was a big disservice to the residents of the town of Richmond for possibly thinking about voicing their their non-approval of their appraisal. But now they don't even know how to compare. And remember, unless you've been doing this for many years, that document is pretty daunting. So they open the document, and this is all very scary for them. And we have left out such pertinent information to help them ease along. So I think next time and I'm not saying the Board of Civil Authority is the one, or even the listers are the one, or the select board's the one, but maybe a few other people looking at it and say, an average town of Richmond citizen, what would make this easier for them to understand and decipher? Everything that you said, I totally agree. That was my first question. Okay, what am I rated? And da. So I totally agree with what she said and added. So the next time, granted, it probably will be hopefully 12, 15 years, who knows? But I think we really need to make sure that it gives us all the information we need with the addresses of those said properties.
It's road codes, and I've asked for that as well.
And maybe we can put the road codes on the information on the website.
It's what does BR stand for?
Yeah.
What does, CS stand for? Those are the road codes, and then your parcel ID number, it's part of that. So it's road code, your address number, that's what makes up your parcel ID. So I asked for that as well. Yes, because if you're looking at your own neighborhood, you're trying to determine, are you along the same percentage as everybody in your neighborhood? What is it? Am I really, you're trying to evaluate, is this a good number or not? And we've seen errors before. in town documents. I'm not saying with the assessed values, I'm saying just in town documents in general. So it's good to double check.
So perhaps for a future agenda item, we have a follow-up on that.
But Jeff, keeping that, the time is of the essence for getting it on the website.
I'll follow up and get it on the website.
First meetings start Monday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other, there's no motion to be made on this other than, making the next action item known. Are there any other comments on this from members of the board? Yeah, I see Angela. Angela, go ahead.
Yes, I'm just bringing your attention to one of the people that's remotely present at the meeting, Jacqueline. He has a question. He would like to be recognized by the board. Thank you.
I apologize, Jack, for not noticing your hand up. Jack, you are muted, but you're welcome to speak. There you go.
Okay, I have concern with it. Seems very rushed to me. They've been working on that for 2 years and we get a little less than a month to do the research. And perhaps it can't be moved back, but this seems awful rushed for a very important decision on the individual landowner. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Angela.
The grievances have to be done by July 1st, right? Isn't that set our tax rate?
I don't know the exact date, but around then, yes, to set the tax rate.
That's one of the reasons that we're doing.
One of the
this.
reasons why there's a time frame.
Because once we have these meetings, then the individual grievances, they take time as well.
Well, when you go all the way to the state, it'll go beyond July 1st. Just to let you know.
I think by statute, I'm almost positive, the tax rate has to be set by you by July 1. The tax bills have to be sent out by July 15th. And I think that's all in statute.
Right.
And then we have to pay them, of course, by
That's
August
what
15th.
that's what I thought, and so, and then, if there were changes after that fact, it would make it complicated to reissue, property tax notices. So I think,
I don't think you don't create a different rate, Jeff. You'll stay with the same rate. It's just the individual property owner. If they.
Oh, I understand that. I'm an individual property owner and I have concerns that it's rushed.
Okay.
And can it go on to next year? That's not allowed?
I think we're already on a program to get this ready and done for this grand list this year. And as others have mentioned, if an individual property owner's appeal takes longer, that can always be changed even after the grand list is finalized.
Speaking as a JP, and well, all select board members are members of the board that hears the tax appeals. But when I was thinking about running for JP the very first time, Denise told me that this is what she looks forward to. The chance to be.
I was there for that. I remember that.
She, I think the phrase was the most fun you can have. Let's just stop there.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next agenda item is following up on the zoning amendment hearing that was held on the 18th. The audience comment was well put. There was a lot of statements in support of the proposed zoning regulations for the Gateway Residential Commercial and the Village Residential Commercial. However, toward the end of the meeting, Carl, right? Gutsa, am I mispronouncing your name? Gertza, had some concerns about the inclusion of certain parcels going north along Jericho Road. And we agreed to close the hearing and not take action that time. And we also have Chairman of the Planning Commission, Virginia Clarke here. So Virginia, what would be your recommendation? Should we have Carl speak to his proposed changes, or would you like to speak first?
we making changes?
We have proposed.
Who's proposed a change to that neighborhood? I don't.
Have you proposed any changes?
We haven't legally proposed any changes. We had a request. And that's what we'd like to just, refresh our memory of your request.
Sure. I think it's a long, I want first to say, very much appreciate all the work, Virginia. I genuinely, there's.
I think you should probably come up to the mic and introduce yourself.
Carl Gertza, 62 Jericho Road. A lot of work has gone in here. I think just as someone who lives in the area and know a lot of my neighbors, we use the sidewalk there all the time, as do kids going to school. I think it's a very walkable neighborhood. I think it's a little different than what we might have sort of down out on East and West Main, down Bridge Street over to the other side. And I think what I was voicing is just a concern of I support very much affordable housing. I see the need for that. I think that some of the most affordable housing is up that part of Jericho Road in the town. And I guess just my concern really is about perhaps making it inadvertently appealing for commercial use up there. So I support, I mean, the part about adding more units, adding increased density and stuff, but the part that I think concerns me most is the trying to like encourage commercial development up that part. So I think I don't know that I'm asking that it be considered. I think that I don't know how to, I'm not going to try and officially do it, but hopefully I'm representing what I was saying to some of you. And I just think that the route to school is something that made a huge difference. I mean, we see kids walking up to school in the morning, we see classes coming down in the middle of the day and going back up. It's just made it a very walkable, appealing place. It's the people that live there, I think, care about it. And if it becomes, more commercial, I worry that tips the balance. If there's a way that we could consider, I know there's the whole like sort of Tilden Ave area and stuff like that. Consider, I don't know. I mean, there may be things that are looked for in the changing to the residential commercial district that allows for some more housing that maybe the current high density housing kind of label doesn't allow for. So I can understand if that's something we're trying to accomplish, but the inclusion of the commercial at the same time is what in that particular area on Jericho Road is what.
Okay, so before we.
And I can speak to that unless you want to.
No, go ahead, Virginia.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that Lisa and Keith and I walked up the Jericho Road quite extensively and looked at all the properties along this section. And we then submitted a list of pros and cons to the select board just to help you think about this. There's very little place that development of any kind can happen there, was the conclusion that we came to. It's a very difficult place to develop. The lower part, the part near to the Four Corners, those lots on the left-hand side as you're going north, slope off down instantly towards Baker and Tilden. There's no room there to turn vehicles around because we considered, well, how about we require that any commercial use have a turnaround so that vehicles wouldn't have to back out across the sidewalk. They would have to turn around and go forwards across the sidewalk. They could see the children they were running over. But currently, all the residences in that section, there's no room for them to turn around either. So all those residents are actually driving backwards across the sidewalk, and on the right-hand side, as you're going north, those properties slope up towards the highway. So it was difficult for us to conceive of it kind of making any difference one way or the other. No matter what you allow, there aren't that many lots that you could actually do anything with. So, I mean, I think the option here is just not to do anything with this neighborhood, to not put it into the RC district, to leave it in the high density residential district, which actually allows for a lot of business opportunities. But then when we come to thinking about the neighborhoods like Tilden and Baker, then we could consider whether to put it in now. We can't put this neighborhood into any other district right now. All we could do is either put it in this one or leave it where it is in the high density residential, which is going to come under consideration at some point.
Question for you. Are you 2 lots south of Burnett Court?
No, I'm
He's like the third lot
further
out
down.
on the right.
Phone company. Yeah. One more house. Where the Headspins used to be, and then our house.
You're here 62, right?
Or JR 0062. Yeah.
We studied your property along with all the other properties and all the other features of that interesting landscape, including the huge waterfall that comes down off the cliff. Highway and rolls down to Baker Tilden neighborhood. And, there's only a couple of properties at the top end where there's actually room to do anything. And they, one has a duplex on the left, one on the right has a duplex. The other land that's available up there, you know, you can hardly imagine putting anything up there, maybe an ADU stuck on a little pinnacle
Right.
somewhere, but.
Okay, so Virginia made reference to the pros and cons, and we do have in the packet document 2H11, which is what Josh is currently showing. So these are comments from the planning commission, and then further down where you see director, I believe those are Keith's comments.
Yep, those are Keith's comments, which are basically
Similar, right?
saying they're similar.
So the options that we have, we can do nothing and consider voting to accept the proposed changes as they were originally presented to us. Or we can make changes and specify certain lots, I suppose, that we would not include. And in so doing, we would probably want to send that back to the planning commission so they could update the ordinances and send them back to us, at which point we would have another hearing. And then having had that hearing, we could then vote to adopt. Do I have that right?
Yep, you're required to send it back to the planning commission
Right.
for changes, and we'll change the maps as well.
Okay, so Matthew, you've been patiently waiting. Would you like to go ahead and speak?
Hi, good evening. A couple of things here. I'm assuming you guys can all hear me. One is, I think Virginia really spoke to some important issues regarding the Jericho Road portion of this. I think the likelihood of any commercial development along that side is highly irregular. I think unfortunately, when we're looking at all of these zoning updates as a whole, a lot of them are really relating, when we really come down to it, to housing, right? There's not enough housing density. The likelihood of the commercial issues along the Jericho Road access are less likely, especially when you look at what Virginia, her explanations. So the more likely scenario is along the Jericho Road access that there's potentially more housing, ADUs, mother-in-law apartments, etc. But to a larger extent, this is part of a statewide issue, if not a nationwide issue. The state of Vermont faces a 30 to 40,000 unit, right? So apartment, house, whatever you want to call it, but housing units, we face a 30 to 40,000 unit shortage. That's according to Vermont Housing Finance Agency. I'll send the link to everyone here, but by 2025. So we're not too far away, and we already have a serious housing shortage. Can Richmond alleviate this on their own? No, obviously not. Can we make a maybe slight difference and help it out? Maybe, yes. These are not going to all be housing units that are owner occupied, mother-in-law apartments, etc. These are going to be some rental units, obviously. There's no way around that issue. So, again, we can make a change. It's going to be in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be a very small change, but the state of Vermont in general has a significant housing shortage. I'm in the housing industry. That's what I do for a living. I see personally in our rental units a significant increase in out-of-state people moving here, and they can outcompete for one reason or another local residents in the housing market here, especially when it comes to the rentals. So that's obviously an issue. We obviously need to create more housing, and the only way to maybe stem what is currently housing is to create more housing. And I think Richmond can do this in a small extent with, making these changes. Who do you work for? I'm sorry? Who do you work for? I own my own real estate investment and development company. Okay. So we do. I'm gonna be completely frank. We do own about 30 rental units.
Yep.
We own 5 in Richmond, and some throughout the other various towns in Chittenden County. But the fact of the matter is that from what I've seen when I got into this industry about 7 years ago to now is that it's out of control. There's going to be no way to control the rent increases and or, the cost of just a single family home essentially increases. So that's all I have to say. I obviously do have, from my personal family perspective, yes, we do own a lot that we could potentially build another house on for my family, which would be beneficial to me. But I think there's a lot of people that can't come to these meetings when you work many hours a week, et cetera. And with whatever 10 p.m. now, 9:30, whatever it is, to be able to speak to it. But I think there's obviously a significant demand in the Chittenden County area for more housing density. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Virginia?
Yeah, I had a comment about Matt's, statement and Carl too, about the additional housing. So the way we have presented the RC districts, there's not really a way to separate out the commercial and the residential. It's a mixed use district. So we can't, well, it doesn't make sense for us to put the Jericho Road in a special district that just has multifamily housing allowance and no commercial. We will be able to address that when we talk about the residential neighborhoods and the HDR. Those are districts that we might not have commercial allowances and might be able to increase the housing.
Yeah.
So that's why, it's not a good idea just to make these little tiny districts that all have their own very special requirements. So
So
Hey, Jeff,
I'd like to make a motion, actually. Can I do that?
you can make the motion, sure.
Okay, so I would like to move the Jericho Road from Main Street to the school. This would be School Street, out of the village residential commercial district for this zoning change, which would put it back, as I understand it, it would put it back into the high density residential. So my motion could be just that. And what I would hope the planning commission would do would be to consider, I've been convinced that this neighborhood is different than Bridge Street. I'll make that motion and then I'd like to speak to it.
Okay, so before we do that, do you feel you have the motion? We're not identifying specific parcels.
Remove the Jericho Road.
Anything Jericho Road.
The School Street.
Well, that which is, I think,
Jericho Road to School Street.
it only
out of,
goes.
that out of the village commercial residential zone.
So would it
Couple of
be?
commercial properties that I think you want to be careful with. Well, that's a different zone.
no, they
Right,
they
would it-
went in under the HDR. And if you look at the HDR district, it allows all kinds of
Okay, so
commercial
that remains that way.
opportunities. So Carl is not yet safe.
Understood, but at
But
least I
none
know
of
about it
those-
when it's happening.
Right, and none of those have come to pass over all these years that we've had the HDR in place, because it's not a very good place for it. is it?
So I don't think there's big risk, but I can speak, I can speak to it.
Can we just, I just want to clarify, just maybe you're clear, but I want to make sure that we're very clear what you're talking. So you're talking the intersection of Jericho Road here.
Yeah.
So everything starting with the West
I
Main.
don't understand this map. This map is not familiar to me. It's not.
Okay, maybe Virginia
It wasn't
can-
on the, it wasn't on our website.
So
Yeah, this was in the packet.
This was.
Brown building right here.
Yeah.
And this is the Ski Express.
Right.
Okay, so we come up here and
Those both border on Main Street.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, those are on, they're part of the downtown
Yeah.
district. This lot is already, this is where the
The
Wakefield
telephone, yeah.
telephone people, that's already in the RC district. We're not worried about that. So we're starting here. These are 3 houses.
Uh-huh.
And we can enumerate them with their ID parcel number if you want, but this is what we're talking about.
I know what they
These
are.
houses, there's a big lot
Yeah.
here, this is the Attaining lot, this is probably the Irish lot. This is the town lot, which is unclear on the parcel viewer what,
Wow, really?
it's a town lot.
Wow, that's where maybe we can put the police station there.
With no access.
Yeah, but no access.
It's even better.
And then these
The access from
few
89.
along here. And then you have any of these lots that border on the Jericho Road. This is the pediatrician's office.
Yeah.
These are houses.
Yep.
These,
Yeah, it's,
so it's
yeah,
only what borders on the Jericho.
yeah,
And these lots.
So,
And with the, 6-unit.
Apartment building, yeah.
Like structure.
so it would be from JR 0047 on the west side, north, and JR 0052 on the east side,
School Street.
north, and that, so that would include anything with the Jericho Road address as well as Browns Court or
The two
Burnett.
Browns Court addresses that.
and Burnett too. There's two Burnett courts here too, right?
Yeah, the border.
Address is probably Jericho Road.
It's one of the Jericho Road.
Jericho,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
So it's only the lots that border the Jericho.
Jeff, your motion is that representative of what you want to move?
Yeah, so what I want to move is I want to take it out of this zoning change and have it revert back to what the existing zoning
The
map
HDR.
shows. And encourage the planning district, the planning commission to deal with it and in the future. And I don't know if this is a substantive change that we have to throw it back to the planning commission.
And Virginia, Scott, and Keith.
I would say
That would
it's
be a
yes.
substantial change.
It's changing the extent of the amendment. So,
Well, I'd still like to move that.
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
Second.
you don't have to encourage, we're just gonna do it.
You're
You
gonna
just
have to-
tell us to do it and we're gonna remove
Yes,
those
so
and just change the maps. So,
Plus, it's a big revision to the discussion, the recent discussions. So, I mean, there have been kind of 3 ways it could have gone. This is one of them, so.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Jeff Ford to strike all units that are on that border Jericho Road, Burnett Court, or Browns Court that would have been included in the expanded village residential commercial district and leave them in the zoning they're currently in. Motion was made by Jeff Forward. We have a second from Lisa Miller. Is there any other discussion?
I'm curious, what is that town parcel that's landlocked? I didn't know about that.
yeah, I don't know, on the parcel viewer, it just says town of Richmond. There's no other information about it.
Hey, let's investigate that.
Have access to.
Well, but we could investigate selling it to one of the adjoining landowners if they want it, I guess.
It's a little orphan piece of land. And
Kind of a
it's,
gore, I guess, is what they used to call
Must be
it.
on a hillside there, right?
it's on a
Yeah.
steep
It's-
slope and it's rock and there's some trees.
So no basketball court.
Probably
Hard, really hard to access.
Tennis.
It's up above, yeah.
Okay, since we seem to have gotten to the silliness,
Yeah.
please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye?
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. So this is referred back to the planning commission to make those changes. Planning commission will make those changes, bring them back to us. We'll hold another hearing and take it from there.
And before we leave this,
Mhm.
there's one other change that the planning commission recommends that you recommend that we make.
I like that.
Which is, the second handout that I gave you. And the reason that we're recommending that you do this is because it was based on some earlier discussion.
Which one am I going to, Virginia? Sorry.
It's multiple
This one?
structures, yeah,
Okay.
multiple structures on a lot, based on some earlier discussions, both at your hearing and in our work that we've been doing, which is that we're recommending that we allow 2 principal structures on a lot. This is like having a duplex, only it not be connected.
Correct,
The
yeah.
2 halves.
Mhm.
This is to allow a little more flexibility in terms of putting more housing. We had it as a permitted use, but based on discussions, we feel that it should be a conditional use,
Uh-huh.
which makes it a little harder. You know, we were trying to make things as easy as possible to put housing. But enough discussion occurred around this that it seemed like having it as a conditional use, which would require the conditional use process by the DRB with hearings, seemed like maybe it was wiser at this point in time.
Okay, so
So we are recommending that you recommend to us that we change that. And following along on that, first red piece under 3.3.5D where it says developable, you can forget about that. We're just gonna leave it the way it was. That is not essential. That was to clarify things, but it didn't really clarify things, so we're not recommending that you recommend that to us to do. But we are recommending that you put in this language along with an attorney's review of such changes. So when you have the two lots on a property, we need to have the legal arrangements.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and we would like it to be clear that it's the applicant's responsibility
That
to
makes
have the attorney review it. It kind of seemed like it was obvious in the conditional review process because the DRB can ask for any other information they think they need. But it seemed like if we put it in there, it would just be clearer. So the applicant is responsible for making sure that an attorney says this language, because the DRB isn't really going to know about the legal arrangements, how good they are. So.
Okay.
Question?
Can I make a motion then?
Sure.
Make another motion.
So this sounds like two different motions to me, Virginia, one for this language and one for making a permitted use of conditional use. Seems like two different motions.
So this motion is that language about the two principal structures listing residential uses, that should be made a conditional use. And the language is kind of like a minor technical point, I would say, but I would just put it in the same motion.
Okay, so you want to open up Notepad so we can draft exactly what the motion should be?
Developable word is taken out, so.
Okay, so we've opened Notepad and we're gonna try to draft the exact phrasing.
Yeah, the section number.
This is the exact what we want, where we want it, under which number we want it to
This
go.
one doesn't say the. Okay, add this, add
So
that, I got you.
add.
Okay.
Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to add that and you want to add that.
Okay. I
And
got
it's in both of the village and the gateway, so we're doing it in both.
Okay, to help everybody help Josh.
Okay,
I
so
move to approve the changes to
add under 3.3.3 conditional uses, add, it's in quotes. Two principal structures hosting residential uses.
Could we, if we're gonna approve everything, could we say the changes to 5.1, 0.23, 3.3.3, 3.3.5, 3.4.3, 3.4.5 as presented?
Yeah, great.
Oh, done.
That sounds great.
Okay.
I'll move that.
Must have a copy of this.
That sounds great.
Okay. And I'll just,
Probably.
Duncan, if you didn't get all that, I'll keep this and circle all the pertinent numbers. And then you can add that. With the reduction, you're right, with taking out, with removing the word developable under 3.
Developable was not originally in there.
Oh, so that's presented in this document,
Yeah,
not on the
that's
website,
presented in this
in
document.
the paper document.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the original document, it was correct, like.
Yeah, so I move to make the
Thank you.
changes to the zoning document as presented by the chair of the planning commission.
I will second.
That's sufficient.
How's that?
Well, I think you wanted to add in the 5 references
Yes.
to the session
And red.
changes as well, and I think we had that in the, no, Duncan, I'll get you those numbers, so you've got that for the minutes.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
And I wanted to say also that we did have the map that the Regional Planning Commission made, of the zoning, the whole zoning district map of Richmond. We had that corrected as was brought up by John Rankin last time. Some of the colors were wrong.
On Church Street.
Yeah, on Church Street. The maps that we gave you just of the districts were correct.
Right.
The map of the whole zoning of the town of Richmond was incorrectly done, so that was fixed.
I would note that Tilden Avenue does not go to Jericho Road, as it's shown in that.
Yeah,
I would note
but
that.
there's a walkway.
Yeah.
Well, there's a walkway, but
Yeah.
not where it's shown.
True, and that's also, although it does connect those
It's
two.
the hillside, it's a steep hillside. right?
Okay. So I really feel better if we're saying do this,
Okay.
throw that in there.
Okay, you want to make one final motion?
I'd like to see a final motion so we can be absolutely sure what we're doing.
But we still have a couple.
I know, but I want to make sure before we do that, start taking comment. I want to make sure we have the motion clear.
Do you want me to read that?
Please do.
Okay, I move to approve the changes to 5.1.23, 3.3.3, 3.3.5,
D.
D,
2.
D1, 2, 3, and 4.
What was the first thing you said?
D.
Oh,
Big
this
one
is
is-
the date.
Okay.
So we want to,
Let's
we
try
don't have any
that.
changes to that.
So let's try
It
that on
starts
again.
here.
I move to approve the
Yeah,
changes to 3.3.3, 3.3.5, D, 2.
Item little I.
Yeah. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4.
2 is the change.
Yeah, so the
Oh,
one
sorry,
we're
two.
changing is this.
Why don't you
one.
read it?
And you see
Okay.
why I want the motion.
This is good. I'm gonna let Virginia read it because I
Okay,
think
this is
she's
good.
following this better than I can.
So
Spell two, wherever it is, TWO or TO.
it's requiring that the
I.
planning commission make the changes to sections 3.3.3, 3.3.5 D II, 3.4.3, and 3.4.5 DII
Okay.
as presented.
After Duncan,
We will get Duncan a copy.
right. Okay, before we go to the people on the call.
So I'll move that.
Okay, we have a motion
second
from Jeff
that.
to do all that. We have a motion from Jeff Forward, seconded by David Sander, to make the changes that Virginia just listed on that sheet of paper. Okay, Alan.
I'm not sure when the discussions about the permitted versus conditional use for two principal dwellings took place. I thought I'd followed this very closely and I totally missed any further discussion of that. I strongly object to moving that from permitted to conditional. It just simply results in people connecting separate structures by breezeways and trash can covers and things I can look out my back windows and see what have been done before to circumvent this. I simply advocate keeping it with the initial proposal that you could have two principal structures. That's it.
Hey, Matthew.
Yes, to further this, I'm a little confused that currently it seems to me that we've now referred all of the zoning changes, because we've considered them now a major zoning change, back to the planning commission, when the planning commission had multiple public meetings on this. And this could now take months and months more. So I guess I'm a little bit frustrated on the fact that it seems to me, based on a small majority regarding potential commercial zoning on the Jericho Road portion of this, that the entire zoning district is now at months on more, has to be essentially reviewed by the planning commission. And now they'll have to have public meetings again as well.
Matthew, you're incorrect. The planning commission can make this change at the next meeting without taking months and months and just give it back to us.
Right. Okay. I guess. Okay. That's good in that regard, I suppose. I'm a little bit confused why we would consider that this can't be dealt with at this meeting by the select board. Is this what is the grounds for not essentially allowing it to be dealt with by the select board versus the planning commission? I guess that's my real question.
What constitutes a substantive change? And I'm going to refer that question to Virginia to explain. What is a substantive change and how do you tell one that's not?
So a change in the extent of the amendment is considered to be a substantive change. So this isn't a change in the extent of the amendment. We're changing the area that is covered. We do have, there's a very tight timeline though, with getting these changes made and the select board setting up a final hearing. So it's not long it's like we have 10 days or something, and then there's a 15-day period. It's a very short amount of time that we have to make these changes. We don't have any more input into it. We don't have any more public hearings or anything like that. We don't have any input. We just have to make the changes that the select board has recommended and send it back to the select board.
And to add to that, if we were not changing the size of the district, if the only change was making something from permitted to conditional, that if that was the only thing, that would not be a substantive change.
I don't know, that's in the gray area.
Okay, but because we're changing the actual physical bounds of the district, that is a substantial change. So as Virginia said, they're just going to go back and put this into the proper format, bring it back to us. And we do have to, there has to be a legal public hearing, but if I understand correctly, smack me if I'm wrong, it could, instead of being a full scheduled separate select board meeting, it could be an agenda item, provided we properly warn it. Okay. Okay, questions from the board? Any other questions from the public? Okay. You have heard the motion, which I will not attempt to restate, but if you'd like it restated, I can have Josh do that. It was moved by Jeff Ford, seconded by David Sander. And if there's no further discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay. I would like to call out before we move to the next agenda item, something that is in your packet. It is item 3H13.
Oh, yep.
As you'll recall, at the public hearing on the 18th, Virginia made reference to possibility of, I believe it was you, smack me if I'm wrong, the Goodwin-Baker building being used for residential going forward. And we do have a letter here from Sidney Miller, the owner of the Goodwin-Baker building, essentially saying, yes, please. We don't need to make any changes because this is already in the proposed district, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's really just a point of information that I've heard this many times since I've been in Richmond. Why can't we just use that for residential? And that does appear to be the direction the owner would like to go in.
And just, for clarity, this way the RC district is set up that he would now be in would allow him 11 units, which is, there would still be some commercial space, just in case anybody was wondering, is there still some commercial? And he would have preferred to have the option of going entirely with multifamily housing. But that would have entailed, if we had kept them in this RC district, increasing the residential density allowance by quite a lot more for the whole rest of the village district. So we didn't go there. We made a kind of a compromise. So, but he's looking at losing 50% of his commercial units. So we would like to give him some other opportunities.
And as I understand his email, he supports the changes as presented by the planning commission.
Yeah. And we did look at all the other parameters of this district, like the multifamily housing standards that we have put in place to make multifamily a nice place to live with open space and stuff. And he's good with that. But all been gone over with him in great detail. There's nothing much there that should hold him up. He will have to convert a little of his parking, which has quite a lot of inch of green space. This is a 40% green space requirement in this district. And his lot is virtually all impervious to either parking or the building. So he understands that and is good with converting some of his parking into green space. So.
Okay. We're ready to move on, I believe. I'd like to note that if anybody here, it's 9 o'clock at night. is peckish. There is a container of sweet potato tartlets. If you're wondering what the heck a sweet potato tartlet is, it's basically pumpkin pie made with sweet potato.
You sold me.
Is this your cooking again, Jack?
And you're welcome to take some with you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is bullet point I, which is consideration of approval for a letter of intent for the grant and aid program. This is a state grant program that provides funding for municipalities to complete work related to the municipal road general permit related to stormwater control. The program has provided between $20,000 and $35,000 in the past. Would you like to add to that?
Only that this is work that we're mandated to do and we do every year anyway. So this grant helps us towards that goal.
Questions from the board on this motion, on the proposed item? Seeing none, would somebody like to make the motion?
I'll do it. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the letter of intent to participate in the fiscal year 24 grant and aid program and to name town manager Josh Arneson as the grant program manager.
Okay, this is David. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Lisa Miller, seconded by David Sander. The motion is to approve the letter of intent to participate in the FY24 grant and aid program and to name town manager Josh Arneson as the grant program manager. Seeing no hands up or looks of concern on the select board's face, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye. David, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, our next item is consideration of approval of a letter of intent. Excuse me, no, apologies, let me just say. Consideration of recommending to the treasurer to purchase a 6-month certificate of deposit. This is in the memo. In February, the select board moved to recommend to our treasurer, Jim Feinson, to purchase a 6-month certificate of deposit in the amount of $500,000 in March of 2023. In that motion, the select board also moved to recommend the purchase of 6-month CDs in the amount of $500,000 in May and July, subject to review by the select board prior to each purchase. Following are the interest rates as they stood on Thursday, April 27th. Actual interest rates may vary at the time of purchase. 3-month CD, 4.5%, 6-month, 4.5%, 9 months, 4.25%, and 12 months, 4.20%. Are there questions?
Go down.
Yes, I was surprised by that too.
Yeah.
No, that's
Jay, this is David. I move to recommend that the town treasurer move $500,000 town funds into a 6-month certificate of deposit in May of 2023.
Okay, thank you, David.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from David Sander, seconded by Jeff Forward, to move to recommend that the town treasurer move $500,000 of town funds into a 6-month certificate of deposit in May 2023.
Question. Should that be divided into two $250,000 pieces? In case the worst thing possible happens?
Because of the FDIC insurance, would $500,000 be covered?
Yeah, I think everything's covered. We talked about this at the last one and things, all of that's covered. And I know at the last meeting, we looked into it a lot more in detail about how much cash we have on hand. And at that time, the board wanted to do 500, then 500 in May and 500 again in July.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, the rates are not going to get any better than they
Our
are.
arrangement with TD Bank contractually means that they will cover us above and beyond the FDIC limit.
Right.
We have additional
My
insurance.
recollection is the FDIC insurance covers the first 250,000, but then the TD Bank is covering the second $250,000 through a separate insurance policy.
That's painful.
But that's a good question.
That's a good question.
I think the Republicans will take us over the brink.
I think that's a very real concern.
God help us.
Okay. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye. David, aye.
And Jane, aye. The next agenda item is following up from an item that was on the Water and Sewer agenda tonight, the Water and Sewer Commission. The state has mandated the towns inventory their water service lines to essentially find out how much lead, if you will, is out there. And again, sure.
I'm listening.
Yeah. And it's not just entirely lead, because there are a lot of cast iron pipes that still date back decades and are pretty rotten. They're not hazardous to health, but they're pretty crumbly. And so the state wants every town to inventory this. Now, this particular amount of money would be money that if it is granted, it includes 100% forgiveness. So essentially, they're calling it a loan, and I'm assuming there's some reason for that, but it's a loan we don't have to pay back. The select board, the Water and Sewer Commission tonight moved to recommend to the select board that the select board approve this loan. And the select board is the entity that can apply for these loans as it is legislative body of the town, and the loan must be collateralized with the full grand list. So that's this item of business. Are there questions from the board or any member of the public?
No, it seems like the only way to go.
Okay, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund application in the amount of $43,300.
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Lisa Miller, seconded by David Sander to move to approve the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund application in the amount of $43,300. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay. We thank you. That will, are we guaranteed to get the money, or is there still the state may or may not?
No, I'm pretty sure it's guaranteed. From what I've read, they put aside a certain amount per water system, and this is the amount they put aside for us. So we just really have to
We front it, they reimburse it.
apply for the loan, get approved, front it, pay for the engineer to do the study, and then we get reimbursed. Yes.
Okay, and absent the state mandate, this is still something that's good to do.
Yes.
We've already got the Tilden, Baker and Cochrane Road water replacement project that's going to go forward, but we don't know, as we found out the Water and Sewer Commission tonight, we have other lines out there, water and sewer, that we never know. We had a sewer break in Cochrane Road where
A sewer break. Yeah, I read that.
2-inch PVC pipe, about this big around, failed. They're 5 feet deep. It was fountaining a foot out of the ground. And when they dug it up, they found that either through frost heaves or something, a stone was pressing against the line and had caused it to fail. As they began digging down to it to try to replace the broken section, it just kept fragmenting. And so they wound up having to replace it with like a 5-foot lane. So there's a lot of stuff down there that we don't entirely know about. Stuff that if we did it today, we wouldn't have used as materials. And this is not going to pay for a sewer line inventory, but even just a water line inventory will be nice to have.
Does anyone know how a water line inventory is done? I mean, records searches, and really can't do it physically.
So it's actually a little bit of both. They will look in to see what records we have on file when things were constructed, to see if that provides them with accurate information. But there is also a site visit component to it, which this firm does a couple of different ways. For this type of inventory, they can actually ask the customer to send in photographs of their pipe that comes in. And sometimes they can determine the quality of the pipe or the material of the pipe just from those photographs, and then they're good. Other times, either won't get a response or the photograph won't work. They'll have to do a site visit and look there. So they've done this inventory with a number of other municipalities, have a really good process.
So our next item of business is probably a quick one, but you never know. It is for an outdoor consumption permit application from Stone Throw Pizza. It is in your packet, but essentially it is to approve an application from Pine Martin LLC doing business as Stone Throw Pizza for outside consumption of beer and wine.
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the outdoor consumption permit application from Pine Martin LLC doing business as Stone Throw Pizza.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Lisa Miller, to move to approve the outdoor consumption permit from Pine Martin LLC doing business as Stone Throw Pizza. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay. We have 3 things on the agenda left, not counting minutes, warrants, and purchase orders. We have an update from the police department on the hiring process. And We have two avenues we can go on that. We can get a public update from Town Manager Josh Arneson. But if we feel that it would be good to be able to ask confidential questions, we do have the option of moving into a short executive session to get additional information. What is your pleasure?
I'd like to do both. I'd like to have an update in public session
and then if what remains is okay. Josh?
And so there's actually two updates, I think, from the police department. One is on the hiring process and one is on the agreement with Heinsberg.
Oh, correct. The other is on the agreement with Heinsberg. So give us what you can in public and then we'll see what we want to do next.
So I'll start with the update in the police chief hiring process. As we put out on Front Porch Forum last week, the hiring committee looked at 20 applicants for the police chief position. Chose 7 to interview. 4 of them accepted those interviews. From those interviews, we selected 2 to move forward with that we felt were qualified to do the job. After we reached out to both of those candidates, one of those candidates dropped out, decided he was no longer interested in moving forward with the process. So that left us with one candidate. We decided not to reach out to another candidate because we didn't want to go out to somebody that we didn't feel was qualified just to have a second candidate. Informed the candidate that, even though he's the only candidate, it's not a job offer. He still needs to go through the process of interview with the first responders, as well as the public forum. And then assuming we want to continue to move forward, there will be a thorough background check and employment would be contingent upon those final pieces coming together. After we posted that on Front Porch Forum, there were some members of the community that expressed concern about applicant Burnell's public record that may have been concerning to them, stemming from an arrest back in 2017 for domestic assault. These charges were dismissed and he continued to work and serve in the field of law enforcement. But given the amount of community concern that has risen over the past few days, I've made the decision to postpone the public forum, which was scheduled for this Wednesday. And in lieu of that evening, we'll be working with the Wilson Community Justice Center. They'll be hosting a listening circle on Wednesday, May 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Richmond Free Library to communicate with community members to come together through facilitated circle dialogue to share their thoughts and concerns. There'll also be space for private confidential conversations to take place as well. The Wilson Community Justice Center will also be available throughout the day on Wednesday, May 10th for anyone who would like to discuss their concerns over the phone or for those who are unable to attend the evening circle who wish to set up an alternative time to have their voices heard. I'm working with Crystal Lee McSweeney at the Community Justice Center on getting some more details, which we hope to announce very soon about the forum, how can they get involved, and how they can participate in that process. The forum will be facilitated by Crystal Lee and her trained staff and volunteers. There will be nobody present, as she put it, in positions of power. So no one from the hiring committee, myself, select board members, the applicant. It is simply a time for people to come and discuss their concerns with the trained staff. She's going to reserve the day of May 10th. She's also going to reserve a day the following week in case she determines that it takes a little bit more time to talk to people and come up with a report that she'll then hand to me to tell me the overall feedback that group has provided, what she found in talking to everybody. After we go through that process, then it is my intention to reopen and re-announce a public forum with the candidate after we've had a good listening session and the restorative circle, or I want to make sure I get it correct, the listening circle facilitated by the Wilson Community Justice Center. But at this point, I have not put a date on that because I want to see and give some time for this process to play out with Wilson Community Justice Center and give plenty of time for people to provide their feedback. So that's the update on the hiring process. Would you like me to go to the next one?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the next is the board at the, I think it's just the last meeting, approved moving forward with an agreement with Heinsberg to provide some police coverage at times when we do not have a shift cover. Right now, we're in a position where we have an interim chief and one police officer who's actively working, another one who's on military leave. So there are times when we have coverage or we have days where we do not have coverage. So the board moved forward, Heinsberg Select Board actually approved that agreement. Our board moved forward that agreement as well. Part of that agreement was to also provide for some increased police services, some patrol services, so parking and speed. So I thought, great, we're in agreement, we're good to go. Announced that, but then received a letter from the union claiming an unfair labor practice and a demand to bargain. So after, consultation with our attorneys as I do on these matters, made the decision to pause the agreement with Heinsberg in order to have a more thorough conversation with the union to make sure that their concerns are addressed. I've been having some very good conversations with the New England PBA, Vermont State Representative, about what their concerns are, how we might be able to address those concerns. And we've kind of been going back and forth with some drafts that I hope to have finalized fairly shortly so that we can get that implemented. But first and foremost, want to make sure that we're taking care of our officers and making sure that their concerns and needs are being met.
Okay, the question from the board.
We have a member of the public here for that I don't know, Bob. Did you want to speak to any of this or?
Yeah. I was asking you guys first, but then Bob, you'd be welcome to speak.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The questions to the board before we go to the public and Bob?
I guess, yeah, tell me how much you want to tell me, I guess, Josh, but are we still on a track? Or have we stopped proceeding with the hiring process as it has been up to this point?
I'd say we're still on a track, still with the same candidate. I just wanted to take a pause in the process to make sure that we address community concerns prior to moving forward with a public forum.
Okay. Okay, I guess, how is it decided to either continue or not continue based on, the community, Center for Justice, what was the, name of that, Justice Center?
Yeah.
I mean, certainly they'll have some interesting comments, I'm sure, but
Sure.
Would they be weighty enough? Could they be weighty enough to?
So it would be ultimately my decision, as I'm the hiring manager in this, to proceed or not to proceed. But I do want to be clear, this isn't putting Dan Brunel sort of back on trial for charges that came up and have been dismissed and then were looked into again and decided not to be brought up by the Vermont Attorney General. This is more a conversation with the community to understand what concerns are, what they might need from policing going forward, so that we can hopefully engage in a more thoughtful process and see what concerns we're able to address. And then, my intention is to move forward with the public forum. I would imagine we'd most likely address that issue at the forum, but also I want to make sure that we have a process at the forum where Brunel is able to talk with the community about his qualifications and answer questions from the community that are other than this one incident from 5 years in his past.
So we would still plan to have something like we're going to have on whatever date it was coming right up.
Yeah.
Where he'd be the only candidate. But we send in questions so that they're not all the same and.
Correct.
I think Duncan was going to put them together and, okay.
Yeah, and like I said, the change that I am maybe contemplating a bit on that is setting aside some time perhaps at the beginning to address the incident from 5 years ago specifically. But then kind of set it, my thought right now, and this isn't fully formed, but to set some time for that, but then say, okay, at this point, we're going to move on and talk about other qualifications of Dan. Or Mr. Brunel, I should say.
Yeah, I think it needs to be aired out. Personally, if someone's accused, I've seen that happen. And it turns out to either not be able to be proven or it turns out to be false. Or if it turns out to be true, then the process should continue. And in this case, it wasn't continued. So
correct.
I have to trust the justice system to some extent.
Okay.
I have two questions. One, so at what point in the process was the committee made aware of Mr. Brunel's background? Was it before, was it before he was chosen as a finalist or after, or?
So I became aware of this after his interview. And it was not rediscussed with the committee as I looked at the information and saw that he had been brought up on charges, they were dropped, they were looked into again by the Vermont Attorneys General. They decided not to bring them back up. And he was he continued as chief in Randolph and he was rehired in South Burlington after that. I looked at it as something that was in his past that he had addressed and overcome 5 years ago.
So the committee did not take that information into consideration in suggesting that he be a finalist, is that right?
We did not have a conversation about this incident in his past,
Okay. And the police chief from South Burlington is on this committee.
Right.
And so he did not bring it up in the committee process at all,
He's the one that brought it to my attention.
but after the committee had already selected a finalist.
After the interview with Brunel, he brought it to my attention, and as I looked at it, I did not bring it back up in the committee because I looked at it again as something that had been dealt with 5 years ago and the charges had been dropped. So I didn't see it as something that needed to be brought back up and discussed with the full committee.
Okay, and I would point out that it feels very unusual to have to go through a reparative process with an applicant before he's been hired. So like, in theory, the community has not been damaged that need to be repaired until after he's hired, but I just it's more of a comment, it's not a question.
No, let me speak to that a little bit. I think the concern was if nothing was done, the public forum would turn into a free fire zone where it would not necessarily be conducive to finding out truth or really hearing. It could really be an incendiary situation. By giving people a chance to be heard and the format that the Community Justice Center does things does not prevent these topics from being raised at the public forum, but hopefully it doesn't cause the public forum to just blow up.
Takes the emotion out of it, or somewhat anyway.
Yeah, I think it allows for some time for conversation and exactly some emotions to be addressed, calm down, be talked about before we can move on to a public forum where there's hopefully a more productive conversation.
I hope somebody advises Mr. Brunel that he's probably in the best position to have that go one way or another, like what he says or doesn't say, at the right time.
In the public forum.
Well, so it's probably the best forum, best opportunity because we have the most ears. I think he has to be very careful, but also very truthful. And
so he'll be both.
And it's his to lose, I guess. Definitely.
Okay. David, do you have anything? Okay, there are two people I would like to hear from, and I want to call him Bob, but June. As a member of the hiring committee and as our local police expert, are there any thoughts you'd like to share on this?
I think Josh did a pretty good job of summing it up. I think that when I found out that there was this incident that was brought to Josh's attention, I also had the idea that, okay, well, this was something he was accused of, but it was dismissed. And after being reviewed by the AG's office twice, I felt like it was not information, although every one of us on the committee was Googling all the applicants. So we were going to come upon it at some point anyway, because we did come across some other, candidates' information that we thought would affect their hiring ability. And so I think that in this case, speaking personally, I did not see it as something that should impact the hiring process.
Bob, would you like to?
Maybe I missed this.
Josh, introducing yourself.
I will. I'm Bob Stafford. I live on Snipe Island Road in Richmond. And I'm the one that's been communicating with you over the last week by email and with some of you by telephone. So I didn't hear you tell the group, and I may have missed it, that we're gonna, meaning the CJC, I'm also the board chair for the executive board for the Williston Community Justice Center. So I've been very involved in this process. And we're gonna supply Josh with a report by the 24th. Am I correct on
Yeah,
that
I
date?
thought I did mention there was going to be a report after the process.
Right, well, I didn't hear the date,
Oh,
so,
sorry, I didn't say the date, so you did not hear the date.
well, because I know that they're anxious on when all of this is gonna happen, so we're gonna supply a report. We're not gonna name names or anything, but we're gonna supply a report to the town manager by the 24th. And it's gonna speak to what we have learned from the people that either call us or personally come in to see us. So one of my concerns, and I've also mentioned this to you in email and some of you personally, is that this process will take some time. And then if there is a public introduction of the candidate, then there may take some time after that. But until we get a police chief here in Richmond, I really strongly suggest that we enter into a contract either with the police chief from Heinsberg or with an appropriate law enforcement executive who can administer this police department. Because this police department is a mess and it's not being run properly at all. And I don't want to see the town have any more liability. It was bad enough that the interim police chief did not comply with Rule 13 from the criminal.
Which is Rule 13.
I'm going to tell you what it is. Rule 13 from the Criminal Justice Council. Rule 13 says that you need to report the mandatory training that is outlined statutorily and by rule, meaning the council rule, by a certain date. Our police officers did not receive that training. We did not report that. That is negligence. Those people should not have been working here, even though they received a waiver from the council. Those waivers from the council are typically for those who are serving in the military, those who have been injured, they may be on maternity leave, or something else may be going on. So that's why I say this police department's a mess. That should never have happened. That's my 40 years of experience in law enforcement, and also operating and helping operate the New Hampshire Police Academy for 10 years, because those people in New Hampshire would not have worked until they complied with that training.
So just for those of you at home wondering what Rule 13 is, here is a little bit of documentation from an official Vermont government website. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of training, including at the bottom, the fair and partial policing, the taser training, the body worn camera training, the internal affairs policy, the use of force and tactics, which I think is one that we definitely fell short on.
Yes.
This is not casual serving suggestions from the state. This is important stuff.
So anyways, that's why I make that recommendation, so that we're not in jeopardy any longer. And I believe that administration of the police department can occur maybe 10 to 12 hours a week. We were very successful with Paco Almond years ago when he came in, and I think he administered the police department over 20 hours. And if you're able to acquire, say, the police chief from Heinsberg, he's on the same record system. He has the same record system that the Richmond Police Department has. I would think it would be easy for him to do that, but there are other law enforcement executives out there that may be interested in doing that as well. And I certainly can recommend those people if you all are interested in that. So I just wanted you to hear that verbally from me. You heard it in writing. So that's why I'm here this evening.
I really appreciate you coming and speaking publicly about this. I know I can speak for myself that I'm concerned as well. And I think we need to do something.
And I wasn't looking for any discussion this evening or any answers from you. I just wanted you to hear it from me. I'm not one to put things in the public view, meaning in the newspaper or in Front Porch Forum. That's not the way I've ever operated. I'll always come to the governing body, including the town manager. And I have to tell you, he's been wonderful to work with on trying to get this listening circle up and running. I think that's tremendous. It really is precedent setting. And as I told all of you in my experience of running executive management hiring for law enforcement throughout New England, I've never run into this before, ever. And I've been involved in a lot of hiring practices. So.
And you were not interested in taking on temporary chiefship here in Richmond until we settle all this.
Be a great opportunity.
Well, I probably could, but I would just be the administrator, and then there would have to be an officer in charge appointed. And I'm not sure I could appoint one from within this police department. So you would probably want to have somebody who has arrest powers, meaning that they are certified police or police officer in the state of Vermont. I'm certainly capable of administering this police department, but I'm not sure that I would want to at this particular time. But I care enough to be here tonight. I've cared enough to talk with you and try to thoughtfully present my thoughts to all of you based on my experience. But thank you for asking. I'm flattered. But I think there are a lot of people out there, and I've actually spoken with some of them.
Mind if I ask your thoughts on a couple of things? You as a board mind, but what should a new chief, where should they start? What should they do first or second?
Well, I think a new chief needs to listen to their employees within the department. I think the chief needs to listen to the other town employees. I think the chief needs to reach out to the school administration to get to know them. If there is a business group within Richmond, then I think the chief needs to listen to them. My hope is, or would be, is that the candidates for the police chief's position would have done that already, because I can tell you that's what I have done, and I've been a police chief in 2 states. So I think that's what you do. If you can't go to a business association, then you go door to door and meet the business owners. And you can have listening circles like what we've recommended to bring community members in. I believe at one point, the town of Richmond had a citizens committee that had no power over the police department, but that came in support of the police chief to talk about what they've learned and to be able to take what the message was from the police chief and go out into the public and talk about that. So I don't know if that, David, is that still active? I mean, weren't you involved in that?
There is a group that is meeting with chief on subjects like data transparency, fair and impartial policing, stuff like that, but they have no formal power. What's the name of that committee that we're using?
I'm not sure that we actually have it.
Well, there's basically a group that has been meeting with the chief, and they're trying to accomplish various things, among them getting the data from Valcour and putting it into dashboards like the city of Burlington has.
Yeah. Let me tell you, that's not hard to do, is to retrieve the data out of that records management system.
Oh, I completely know how to do it. I am not allowed to type it in, and Ben's been busy, but we've got the Power BI database software to render the dashboards once we have the data.
Well, as I said, it's easy to get. It's not time consuming to obtain it.
Right.
And you should have it when you ask for it.
Okay, other questions from the board for Josh or Mr. Stafford or June? I see you have your hand up. Go ahead, June.
Yes, I just wanted to answer what Bob had asked. The Police Advisory Committee was established under Joe Miller's reign as the chief in Richmond. And once he retired, that sort of disbanded.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Right. When I returned to Richmond 2012
or something,
I was asked to serve on that because they were trying to fire it up again under Jeff's, tenure. So I know it was there. I know it was effective when Alan Buck was the chief and when Joe Miller was the chief. And the town was very fortunate to have both of them.
One of the things I think we required of applicants was writing a strategic plan. I mean, Mr. Brunel had one. I assume other people went that, or maybe they didn't go that far, but they would have. But do we have one in exchange? Do we have a plan? And you don't have to say yes or no, but I'm hoping that we have something like Bob's talking about, expecting the chief to do certain things for that exact reason, to build community support and to put networks out and get some commonality both directions. Right. So just a thought.
And some chief applicants, which I've done in the past as well, have submitted a 30, 60, 90-day plan, which speaks to those points that you were making, Lisa.
You're right. I mean, the very first thing is that we have a defunct department, essentially it's staff, but it's almost on life support. So on day one, that's the situation. So they have that whether they want it or not.
Right. And I can tell you the one thing I'd do if I was the police chief and I got here is I'd have those Durangos marked. And the reason being is that's community policing. The town of Richmond does not need an unmarked police vehicle. We need a vehicle so that if I'm up in the bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning and I look out and I see the silhouette of that roof rack going by and maybe the moon has reflected off of the decals, then I'm going to feel pretty safe and secure because that's what it's about. That's what that vehicle at least has represented to me throughout my life. And I've heard that from community members as well. So I would get those cruisers marked ASAP.
There's one thought that I've had, and it's just fantasy at this point, but the applicant's most recent police position was with the Orange County Sheriff's Department, which imploded catastrophically. The outgoing sheriff lost to one of his deputies, and 17 out of 21 of the deputies left, including our applicant. He was a lieutenant in the department. My fantasy is that some of those individuals who left might be still looking for positions, and we might, sometimes a candidate brings friends along. That would be a nice thing to have, to be able to just plug and play. But there's no guarantee whatsoever of that.
Can I caution the board on not wishing to hire friends of the police chief?
Thank you.
And the reason being is you have a history of friends being hired and those people have not worked out. And you have to be very, very careful and very, very selective. Plus, you also have to follow the council rule and make sure that background is done by council rule.
Right. Yeah, that's why I say it's kind of a fantasy, but I'd also like a pony.
Well, it's a nice one. It's a nice one, Jay, but my experience tells me it really doesn't work.
Okay.
All right.
My hope is that we're not just looking for bodies.
Yes.
Yes.
We're
Don't
looking
need
for,
many of those.
one of my hopes through this, community visioning process about, what we want as police is to try to start putting parameters around what do we mean by community policing? It's an amorphous term. It's a indistinct term. And I think we should start thinking about it. What does it mean? Does it mean 1,500 traffic tickets on Cochrane Road?
Cochrane Road, yes.
Cochrane Road, maybe some, but there was a time when we were the 6th or 7th most traffic tickets in the state. Trying to figure out what it is that we want. And it has to start with the chief. It has to start with the leadership of the kind of department that we want. So I hope that, that the applicant has presented himself well. I hope the community defines what it is it wants and we'll see whether this applicant fits that definition.
Right. And the applicant is going to have to respond to some of those questions because community policing is a philosophy. It's not a program. It's a philosophy that includes an awful lot of things. And One of them is your cars are marked, and if you're not running radar and you're parked, you're parked in a position close to the road, not off in a sand pit someplace, but close to the road, so that you look like you're actually monitoring traffic, but you may be doing paperwork or you may be following up on a ticket that you just wrote. That's what it's all about. And it's about getting out of your car, going for a walk down at, is it Riverside where the mobile homes are? Riverview. I mean, that's a really big neighborhood. We have some neighborhoods. Park your car day or night, get out, have your portable radio on and walk, get to know the people. Listen to what they have to say.
So I'm going to ask the board a question. In addition to the hiring process, we also got an update from Josh about the union grievance and about the joint operation with Heinsberg. I don't know if this was called out. A lot has been said, but one of the things the union wants is that if we need a shift covered on such and so day, we have to offer the opportunity to do that shift to one of our own officers. So if, for example, we need somebody on Friday night, it's not a night Allison is scheduled, but she would work that and get overtime.
Yeah, I don't know how much we want to get into.
Okay. Right.
So I did, I mean,
into executive session.
right, I
Right.
don't want to discuss what they're requiring. I want to respect the request and make sure we have a fair negotiating process with the union.
But they do make some good points in the grievance for what it's worth, in my opinion. So with that in mind, do we want to do an executive session to ask any questions?
Yes.
We do. Okay. So we would need two motions.
And thank you for inviting me to the table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for coming.
I move to find the premature public knowledge about negotiations with the New England Police Benevolent Association would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial damage.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff to that effect. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by Lisa Miller, moving to find that premature public knowledge about negotiations with the New England PBA would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I
David, I.
And Jay, aye.
I move that we enter into executive session to discuss negotiations with New England Police Benevolent Association under the provisions of one VSA 313A 1B.
Okay, motion from Jeff.
This is David, I'll second.
We have a motion from Jeff Ford, a second from David Sander, moving that we enter into executive session to discuss negotiations with the New England PBA under the provisions of one BSA 313A 1B. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. So, Aaron, we do have agenda left after this. We do not know how long this session will take, but we do hope to be able to come back before too late and finish the agenda. So we'll be leaving the room and not broadcasting what's happening, but we do expect to be back. So,
yeah, I'm gonna wait. It's just gonna be sort of a short executive session or a very long one?
I would
don't
hope
know.
short, but we'll see.
Okay.
Duncan, I would say.
I'll be here.
Duncan, I would say the same goes for you. We've got two agenda items and then minutes and warrants and purchase orders. If you're comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there.
Whatever you like, sir.
Yeah. Good job. Hang tight, guys.
Thank you. Companies, we are returning from executive session. If you pause recording.
No, I just kept recording, kept the time running. Let me get my phone out.
Okay. So we are back from executive session and no one's in the restroom. Okay. Our next agenda item is an update on the American Rescue Plan Act Committee. People have been hearing about this ARPA committee for going on 2 years now, but we, I think, are pretty close to having some movement forward. The committee has been, evaluating things very carefully, but at our last meeting, we paused. We skipped one meeting because we were waiting to hear back. We wanted to give some things some time to percolate. But we, at the next meeting, which is going to be on the second Wednesday of this month, we kind of sort of hope to vote on 5 items And depending on how that vote goes, they would then come to the select board and the select board could make the legal decision. I'm going to share just briefly the,
Jay, I might point out that meeting date is the same meeting date as the police listening session.
okay.
You might want to think about that.
Well, we could, or we could just make it a quick meeting. We'll see. Here we go. I'm just going to share briefly, what I'm referring to. This document that's coming up is our project list. This is posted on the ARPA page on the town website, along with all the previous stages of data, the original unformatted, uncleaned up, suggestions, the consolidated suggestions list by count. And now we have this. The color coding is meant to say which ones have we already voted on, recommended to the select board, which ones have we discussed at length and where we actually have dollar amounts, and which ones have not been formally presented to the ARPA committee and where we may not at this point just have boom a dollar amount. The Bridge Street Complete Street, the Bridge Street East Sidewalk, and the municipal oversight. Those are all really part of the same thing. The municipal oversight is the dollar amount that we were suggested to include to do the town's monitoring of that project. These things just don't happen. The MISC recreation items, that's a pretty big chunk of money, $249,000. That number may come down because the reclamation committee has given us an itemized list, but the ARPA committee is not required to support all of it. And I have a feeling we won't, just in discussions with Jeff. The cemetery, repair of headstones, adding a fence and gate. The cemetery commission has agreed to front 50% of the cost, and their project estimate means that the remaining 50% would be $22,000 and change. And so these are all known quantities, and unless something unusual comes up, I expect us to be holding a vote at the ARPA committee on these. The remaining items at the bottom, we still don't have any kind of really solid number on how much it would cost to digitize the various town records. We don't know because Jeff just refuses to give it to us on how much money he wants for various town center projects. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be everything that's left, which I understand. And then MMC TV for wiring the conference room for audio and video, that was an expenditure on their part, which we benefit greatly from. And town manager Josh Arneson has suggested that we donate $10,000 back to them, basically as an in-kind payment. So if you look at the very bottom of the spreadsheet, including that $249,000 grand total for the recreation committee, this would consist of $752,000, give or take the odd penny, leaving $447,000 not allocated. And so if we assume that, let's just as a ballpark number, say we approve 150,000 of the recreation committee and don't approve 100,000, that's still going to be somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000 that we may then just say, town center committee, do what you can. But that's not me saying that it's going to happen. That just seems to me like a fairly plausible and likely thing. So at our meeting on the 15th, we'll probably come to you and say we have approved these we have not, and then it'll be up to the select board to say, do we feel good at this point, allocating this money formally, or are there other questions we need to answer? So are there any questions from anybody public or on board?
Jay, what's the deadline for committing the balance?
The money must be committed by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026.
Oh, okay.
So there obviously are going to be some things where if you want to build something expensive you're gonna have to get bids, you're gonna have to get contractors. The clock is ticking because you can't wait until the end of 2024 to suddenly decide you want to build a moon rocket.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much money for a project that size.
Right.
Or enough money for.
Well, if we get a bunch of garbage cans and some fireworks. But
Firework committee, that's what the reserve funds for.
The
one project, the sidewalk project that we are trying to move forward and find money to, because sidewalks take forever to build.
Really?
Yes, you have to. There's a lot of legal planning and so forth, and then there's
no moving parts for the rest.
Some of that would be stuff that our town highway department expects to do, right?
Not on the Brick Street sidewalk, I don't think.
Okay.
That'll probably be mostly contracted because they're doing a really good job with repairing existing sidewalks, but I don't think that they have much interest in a brand new sidewalk construction.
Yeah, that's a fairly extensive one.
Yeah.
A complicated one. It's as far as, I don't have as much problem with the amount for the recreation, but I do have a concern about the process. So like, I could see a scenario where we would approve a certain amount, could be 250 or whatever, or for work on volunteers green, contingent on a fairly robust public engagement process.
Absolutely.
And what that might be, which the Recreation Committee did present us with some ideas, but it wasn't.
I've got my email inbox and my phone line lit up from people who are nervous that we would go in with bulldozers.
Yeah.
And start ripping up volunteers green to put down basketball courts at odd places. So yeah, we would have to have multiple public hearings to make sure that, and have a plan submitted, reviewed, looked at by our attorneys, looked at by our zoning. I mean, this would not be something we do overnight.
I got a couple things I gotta say. Paving large surfaces in volunteers green, I think is off my list. I would stand in the way of any of that.
Oh, yeah.
Basketball court, I just don't think it's viable. I mean, the floodplain has got something to do with it, but we're going to be adding housing in the village, or somebody's going to be adding housing in the village. We're allowing for it. It will probably happen. I mean, more people are needing recreation. They're going to need some open space. I mean, as we fill in the village, where are they going to look at the sky? Those become like volunteers green. So
I agree.
I think it needs to stay more like it is.
Well,
than not.
There are some things that are scary popular, like tennis and pickleball. And you would not believe the number of people who've been saying, so when can we expect the pickleball court to go in?
Yeah.
We actually talked at one point about, we own Brown's Court. We're not using the entire area up there for girls softball field. But then on the other hand, we've been kind of eyeing that for possible affordable housing since it has water, sewer, sidewalk, and we own it.
Yeah.
There's so many balls in the air, but one thing I think we can all agree on is tentatively allocating the money does not mean we're spending the money. And it doesn't mean that we're saying, how soon can you start to anybody? We have to think this through carefully. This is just really what we're kind of doing there is we're saying, we want to be able to know how much is left. And people keep talking about, we have $1.2 million as though we have all of that. We've already allocated some of it. We're going to be allocating more for the sidewalks. It's irresponsible to keep telling people we have 1.2 when we don't. And there are people who are late to the process who still think that the entire 1.2 is out there to be fought over. Okay, so there's no motion to be made on that. And I'm not seeing the hands up. So our final agenda item before purchase orders, warrant, minutes, and that kind of thing is a report from the Richmond Rescue. The Richmond Rescue report is in the packet. I'm going to just share the document that I have here. Michael Chiarella is always available if you have specific questions. Normally, though, he just does send in this report. So they're going to be hiring their fourth full-time employee. The volunteers are already working 1,000 hours a year. Our part-time employees are already working 1,000 hours a year. Volunteers have been picking up gaps, but there's a lot of stress on those volunteers. So they hope by hiring a fourth full-time employee, the volunteers will not be burned out. They're not asking for any more money from the town of Richmond. They say that they will be able to pay for that new employee by the increased revenue brought in by covering Heinsberg and St. George. There will also be reducing spending on part-time employees because then one of them will be a full-time. They have made a number of purchases. 2023 Ford Interceptor for use with paramedic intercepts, backcountry calls, and first response. A Lucas device, an automatic chest compression device.
Those things are amazing.
Yeah, I love the part that it points out about CPR. The device never gets tired.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Stair chairs. They have existing stair chairs, but you've got somebody on the second floor of a building. They need to come down a narrow set of stairs. The stair chairs basically allow you to move the patients downstairs using traction wheels.
Oh, it has those rotating like casters.
Yeah. As far as what they've been doing, I'm actually pleased by this next paragraph. In terms of backcountry rescue, it appears that they only had one injured backcountry skier. And that they were brought on a sled. Huntington Fire Search and Rescue and the staff of the ski area helped. Last bullet point, they will be taking their 2014 Chevy ambulance for remounting. They're basically taking the patient compare compartment off the chassis, remounting it to a Ford F-550, which saves a lot of money over buying a net new truck.
So I'll have 2 Fords.
And then any additional documents, including their Form 990, their financial statement for charitable purposes and stuff, it's on the town website. Michael is obviously not here, nor is Sarah, but does anybody have any questions or comments relating to this report?
Yeah, I do. For one, I really appreciate this service. And it seems like a heck of a deal to me, and the fact that they've been entrepreneurial enough to pick up other towns, which has saved us money and given us more coverage. I think they're exemplary. One thing that I'm surprised that I don't see in this report is numbers. How many calls they go on, what were the results of any of that, I think I would kind of expect to see that in a quarterly report. Compared to what I would expect to see a similar type report from the police or fire. What
Usually they
do
provide that.
They usually do that, don't they?
I think if you click into their documents,
Yeah, I clicked into their
They've got
document.
a lot
I'm
more
not sharing. Wait,
data.
I'm not sharing the right document. Let me share the correct document.
2022, 23 statistical reports.
Oh, sorry, here it is.
Okay, that's 2021, 20. We have it as of this year.
2022, 2023 is the current year.
We've seen that.
I don't see it. So that, if you go to the top,
I know it says
2021, 22.
but
Oh, yeah, end of March. Okay, that is new.
Oh, I got you. So
I think they mislabeled this sheet because the title is 2022, 2023.
Right.
But yeah, calls, patients transported.
Yeah, that's
So this is excellent. So, this is the kind of thing that I would love to see from the police department as well.
Yeah.
We had a fully staffed police department. What do they do?
This data is in Valcor, and I have a list of the data fields that the city of Burlington uses for their dashboard. There are 2 or 3 distinct data sets for 2 or 3 distinct dashboards. I've asked the chief to give me that data. I've asked if I could go in, since I know a thing or two about computers. Could he sit there and watch while I do the actual downloading? And he said, nope, that's not legal. And so I said, well, when I asked for this months ago, we haven't gotten it yet. I know he's got 1 or 2 things going on, but I would like to see him it would take somebody who knows what they're doing half an hour tops to go through and say, I want these fields for this time range. Here's a CSV file with it in it.
So could we make note of that the select board chair is asking the town manager for the police chief to respond to that request for data?
And if he's misplaced the list of fields I need, I can resend the email. But yeah, if you're wondering what is possible, because obviously even if I got the data today, it wouldn't be a dashboard tomorrow.
Right.
The city of Burlington is what everybody modeled their reports on. In fact, I just said, what fields are you extracting? Because if they have those fields and I have those fields, in a perfect world, I can do what they do.
Something would be better than nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
But they have some very impressive reports that have pretty much everything you need. And so I'd like to put that together for the town of Richmond. So if I get the data, the rest is just me holding up in one of the mezzanine rooms of the library where my wife can't find me and pounding those out. And then they could be linked in. They would be initially living on my PC, but then we would upload the files to the town website and they could be hosted there.
Some other data that we've asked for is speed data from our new signs. That would be, our new radar signs, that would be interesting as well.
Sorry.
I've mentioned to Josh a few times that it's really a high priority of mine, get all of our speed signs working. I hadn't realized that the car at the fire station was not meant to be showing anything. Can it collect data and show things? Because people were gonna go, why isn't it give me numbers? When I drove down Cochrane Road over the weekend, neither the sign at the near end of Cochrane Road or the sign at the far end of Cochrane Road were doing a thing.
When I came in tonight, there was a cart on West Main Street as I'm driving,
But it wasn't.
but it didn't do anything.
So the Cochrane Road signs, Pete lowered them on April 20th. Because part of the issue is access to the sign. So he lowered them, and I thought at that point they were working. If they're now not, well, now that they're lower, we can get in troubleshoot them a lot easier. He fixed the one up on Jericho Road, because it was locked and that the key, Pete was able to get in there.
Yeah, no one had the key.
Changed the key, changed the battery. When he left on April 20th, that was also working. But apparently now they're not, so we need to figure out why. The cart up on Route 2 is set up to not provide feedback because all it's doing is collecting data. We don't want cars to react right now. What we want is to gather that data so then we can have a report to go to V-Trans to say, here's the speed at each entry point into the village.
Cool.
And then assuming
I
that
purposely sped up to watch it, but it didn't.
I did the same thing. So, but the reason.
Because I drive so
the
slow.
we'll get that data, and then because we have to show that at those points, people, the average or the 80th percentile is 3 miles an hour or more over the speed limit. And then that is part of the data they need to then allow us to put in the pole mounted signs, which will flash it back. So when you're driving 90, it'll tell you you're driving 90.
Right, but we've got 4 blue flashy signs.
Yeah, I haven't seen those yet.
Well, we picked sites for 2 of them. We're gathering data to legally be able to put the other 2 in, but there's a little bit of a curveball. Which is that the Manuform for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or aka the MUTCD, apparently says thou shalt not have blue flashy lights.
What?
And why would you buy it?
Well, that's what, so Pete brought it up. We looked at it. I tried to
How did Stowe get one?
well, so Pete brought up an instance where there was one, I think, in Jericho. And they were made to remove it or turn the flashy light off. So I need to, because the part that we were able to find, we looked at it quickly in the MUTCD was, I wasn't convinced that that's what that part meant. So I need to do some more diligence to figure out if it really is prohibited or not.
Waiver.
But Pete's pretty sure, and that was part of our conversation, is like, how the hell could they sell it to us then? Maybe it's a novelty. I shouldn't say that. But so as far as placement of those signs, so I think Pete's initial intent was to get to those on April 20th. He was able to get to those. He fixed all the other signs as best he could. He's got dig safe standard approved. He actually has the signs built and mounted on the poles, which is part of the process, or at least built and easily mountable. And he said this week he'd go out and have some time to actually put those in. So those new signs, they're going to alert you as you enter or either end. Cochrane Road will be up. And then the thing that we're still waiting on is a CCRPC study that should be completed by the end of this month as far as placement of temporary speed humps on the western end of Cochrane Road.
Those are gonna be really, really.
I am really looking forward to those.
Yeah, I want to see those when those first go in. Here comes.
Well, I think that the speed bumps will have tremendous positive.
Get the speed signs to say they're only going.
But we
20.
can't put in a whole bunch along, I mean, I'd like to see some in a lot of other places, but we have to put these 2 in first and.
Well, I was driving in tonight and I saw the cart and I was wondering if it had the blue strobe light and it wasn't doing anything.
You were hoping to make it go off.
I looked down, I'm going like 28 and the speed limit's 30. So I sped up 30, 35, nothing. I'm like, oh, I better tell Josh that's not working.
And then an actual cruiser pulls out. And
Yeah.
Ah, blue lights.
It's because of people like David that we had to get the model that came with a high score readout.
Okay.
Okay,
Can we do a quick grant update?
please do.
It'll take me 30 seconds. So the board had previously approved accepting the Vermont State Division of Historic Preservation grant for $14,801. This money will go towards the work that we're doing on the library exterior. As we went to sign the final grant paperwork, they came to us with a $20,000 grant. We asked, is that a typo? They said, no, but I can give you $20,000. So we're going to sign that grant agreement. I'll sign that tomorrow. We will send that in to, into the state to get that done. And then we will sign the agreement with the contractor to make that work moving forward. So, and then what I want to do is just bring that back to the board to have you officially approve the increased amount at the next meeting.
Did you explain the speed card?
Yeah.
And why it's not lighting up?
I did.
And David and I went, oh. It makes perfect sense.
You asked me for the data.
Yeah.
We had a meeting to get the data
Mhm.
and you canceled it.
Right.
Not
But-
at my request.
I canceled it.
I will be
because-
here Friday
Okay.
and I will get you whatever data you want on Friday.
Right. I canceled the request because.
I'm sorry, not Friday, Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday. I canceled the meeting because it looked like it was going to be inopportune for both of us due to our schedules, but I had asked for a specific list of fields and it had been outstanding with you for 2 months before we said, let's have a meeting. Okay. But yeah, if I will reach out to you Wednesday or Thursday, because if it happens this week, my schedule on Wednesday and Thursday is not particularly crowded.
Okay. And I'll come see you on Wednesday about a whole lot of other stuff.
Thank you.
You done? Okay, we're done with the
Right.
rescue service.
As far as our next items of business, we have approvals of minutes, warrants and purchase orders. That since we're talking about money for the moment, item C under agenda section 4 is a follow-up and discussion of loan payments. And if we could we just quickly knock that out?
Yeah. So this is a follow-up in the loan
Oh,
payments.
sorry, yeah. Yeah, so there was a question about why the loan payments were different amounts, and essentially it's like they have different maturity dates, so one of them had higher principal payment right now than the other.
I figured that'd be quick. Okay. Let's move on to minutes, warrants and purchase orders. The minutes of 4/17, so that was our last regular select board meeting. I hope you all had a chance to read them. Were there any additions, corrections, deletions to the minutes of 4/17?
Is that why they were in there? I was confused about what, well, no, I guess that's why they were in there. Let me think my thought through first. I made some notes.
I have a couple.
Okay.
Go ahead.
On page 7. This is the regular meeting, right?
Mhm.
Okay, under the item where we moved $1,000 from the Andrews Community Forest to pay Arrowwood Environmental Fund for work to present future select board meeting, not public meeting. The motion failed because it was already included in their contract. Their contract.
We're just in the minutes.
Yeah.
This is page 7 of the meeting on the 17th.
So the reason why there was this motion was because a select board meeting presentation was included in their contract and they were asking for an additional $1,000 for that. And it wasn't for an additional public meeting.
Okay,
And so no one seconded, failed for no second.
that's when you adjust the minutes, okay.
And I had one other one.
That was for the overrun that they had
So
requested.
there was 2. So, so we did approve $1,306 for the presentation at the public meeting that they already had. We approved that and we did not approve, the motion did not carry. It was $1,000 for work to present at a select board meeting, not a public meeting. And not that it's select board meetings are not public, but
well,
it was in their contract, original contract to do a presentation.
Exactly. And they saw an opportunity to maybe cover a loss they'd incurred somewhere else.
Yeah, and so there was no second to that motion. And then further on page 11, under the discussion about police coverage with Heinsberg, the quote to me was a little bit incorrect. I said, the sentence that says, I talked with the police chief at Heinsberg to ask if we could use their detainee processing facility. He has told me that yes, they would be willing to allow us to use detainee processing. To allow us to do detainee processing there, not for them to do it. Our processing. In fact, he's offered for us to do that at no cost. Essentially give us a key to their police station.
So we could use that for like weddings and things.
That right.
Shotgun weddings.
Which it could save us like many hundreds of thousands of dollars on the addition on this building.
Yeah, and if we do something like that, I would want to
Okay.
return the.
Does
favor.
anybody have any other
Yeah.
changes or updates to the minutes of 4/17? Okay, can we have a
This is
motion?
David, move to approve as amended.
Second,
We have a motion made by David Sander, seconded by Lisa Miller to approve as amended the minutes of April 17th. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. The next minutes would be the meeting for the special meeting on Tuesday, April 18th, relating to the two new zoning districts. I hope everybody had a chance to look at them. Did anybody have any updates to those?
They look good to me.
I looked at them. I didn't see anything I thought was odd. Can we have a motion to approve?
This is David, so moved.
Second,
We have a motion from David Sander, seconded by Lisa Miller to approve the minutes of April 18th, 2023. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. Okay, that brings us on to warrants and purchase orders. I'm trying to remember, do we have,
Yeah, purchase orders, do you have to? I didn't notice.
I'm not,
Can I bitch?
While we're looking for that, I'll move to approve the
Yay.
warrant this week.
I don't think there's any.
okay, then we should approve warrants as presented.
No. I have to bitch about a couple of things. We're being charged late fees by Casella. It looks to me like they send us the bill right after we just paid a bunch of bills. So our cycle doesn't pay it until it comes up
Oh,
again.
that's
And they
right.
charge us a late fee of $3 every time. And they'll probably raise it, though, like they raise every other rate. That's just, they're out of sync with us. You know, I mean, the world's not going to end, but.
Well,
we can stay
if you think that's bad, you think about how WEX has been treating us for the fuel cards.
I looked at a lot of those, yeah. Geez.
There was actually a couple others I wanted to ask about. I got my.
There are some things where our employees are buying things on behalf of the town and being reimbursed, which is fine, but they're paying state tax on the purchases, because there is apparently no way for them to not do that. But I don't think we can get excuse me, I don't know if we can get reimbursed for the state tax that was paid. It doesn't add up to a lot. It might be 3 figures, but it's just another one of those things. Bleeding a little bit of money here and there.
Okay, so that means I'm looking for, oh, by the way, one weird thing about the warrants, the entire minute from the, I was scrolling through them, and the entire minutes from, the November 7th, 2022 select board meeting were in the warrant packet.
I've never seen it.
I put the,
Yeah, so I'm scrolling through the invoices, dum-de-dum-de-dum.
oh, that's what I saw. Yeah, there was a meeting minutes.
Oh, I think I put that as backup for that
Oh.
PO to show that. Which PO was that for? I should have, usually I like circled the.
Survey for Town Center project.
So I just wanted to kind of remind, oh, you did approve this, and usually I try to circle that. I don't
Okay,
think I put the.
I wonder
entire
if the
minutes
minutes
in
have
there.
never been approved. Yeah.
Let's do
I think I
it.
put close to it, but usually I'll circle the motion to be like, yes, you guys did make the motion, so I'm sorry for not
Oh,
doing more.
it's okay. I was gonna know
Clear on
plus when
that.
that happened. There was an item for man and machine relating to, it looked like
Surveillance.
surveillance camera.
Yep.
Somebody's downloading stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was related to a police case where we needed some of their surveillance footage, and they don't have, their system is set up that works for them, but they don't have a way to download that onto a separate lipstick drive basically, or thumb drive, and hand that over. So they actually had to come in and have some additional work done to make that possible, and I asked, I asked Heidi, I said, well, is this just fixing a deficiency in your system? And she said, no, we've had the system for years and never had a need for this other than to turn this over to the police. So I said, well, that's fair, and it was really pertinent to the case.
Okay, and that makes perfect sense. It was just like,
Yeah, no, that also,
Yeah, I thought I had one there, but no.
okay, any other questions?
we're not paying for the man and machine security system.
Move to approve.
It's not a question. I will approve it. You bought wood chips for the playground equipment?
A lot of wood chips.
I think he bought those, yeah.
Okay, so Pettinelli is a playground equipment supplier, and they're expensive chips.
Okay.
So what the school district does is they buy a lot of wood chips.
Mhm.
They do for the heating system. And there's a different supplier they'll bring a tractor trailer load.
Okay.
And they'll bring a partial load if you work with the school district. So Phil Graff is the facilities manager for the district.
Phil.
I talked to them.
Just tell them Jeff Forward sent you.
It's like they're 2 or 3 times more expensive.
Okay.
It's like $2 a yard, I think, or no more.
Well, you can buy them by the ton.
Yeah.
So that's a bit, a tractor trailer load is about 90, 90 or 100 cubic yards.
Yeah.
And that's about $1,500 for that. So instead of $500 for 10 cubic yards.
No.
So we've had a motion from David twice now.
I'll move it again.
I'll second twice.
Okay, we have finally second. We have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Lisa Miller, to approve the warrants as presented. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. Okay, items for the next agenda.
Josh, you might want to turn off the circulator pump for the post office. I not now, because it's cold out right now, but before June.
Or July, depending on the weather.
Yeah, no, we gotta do that. I was thinking about that last week when it was getting warm.
I'm glad you didn't, because they'd be complaining right now.
They would be, but once we get through these last couple cold days, to make sure we turn it off so we're not. And I think, didn't we? Thought that we had opted double check. I think we had reconfigured some things so it wasn't continually sending heat their way. But I'll double check on that. But we'll turn it off on us.
Okay, so items for next agenda. I think we should continue randomly appointing Keith the warrant to various positions, just,
Love it.
just why not?
I think dog catcher should be the next one.
Dog catcher, yeah, that, by the way, if anybody would like to apply, we have approval of committees and volunteer positions, appointed positions. As you probably noticed in French Works Forum, there is a post from me today saying, okay, seriously, here are the ones we have open. And there are some committees that I'm a little concerned about, like the parking committee.
You're going to be dysfunctional.
They're basically
moribund, essentially.
They have 3 open slots. We have no not candidates for those slots. We only have 2 left. And so,
They're important too. I had mentioned to Josh that if we could invite them to our select board meeting at some point, but then Kevin couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I was hoping the whole committee would come because they're as a group, they're a whole lot more than any individual. I mean, they really work off each other well.
but I would just encourage people, if you look over the list that was posted, it's up to date as of today. Duncan gave me them. We had to add in all the stuff that Jeff finally got around to telling us he wanted. I thought finally we were going to have a chance to get somebody else in as energy coordinator, but unfortunately he said he wants it. So we need to do
Kevin
that.
knows how to do it by now.
So we're appointing keys to random things. We're doing committee assigned appointments and appointed position appointments.
The town center committee would like to do a presentation.
Town center would like to do a presentation.
So like with the architects, so that the presentation might take 15 minutes and with questions, you might want to schedule maybe 30.
Okay. Further update from ARPA. Probably further follow-up on reappraisal, because after that point, the grievance hearings will have happened.
Zoning, or will we have zoning again?
We expect to have the zoning thing back to, yes, if we have it back, do we accept it back and then have a hearing for the next meeting, or could we do the hearing at this meeting?
No, you have to warn the hearing.
Got to warn the hearing. Got it.
Probably 2 meetings out.
So it's basically just accepting it back and scheduling the hearing.
I think there's going to be village residential north and south also coming up. Those won't be too controversial, I don't think.
Yeah.
But they.
That's optimistic.
No.
Anything else people can think of right this second? I would imagine there will be follow-up on just miscellaneous police stuff.
There'll be plenty, I'm sure.
I think you'll find the town center presentation interesting. That we hope to bring to you both some stuff that's visual, but also questions for the select board.
Okay.
The decisions to make.
Okay, as always, you know how to reach Josh if you do have other things for the agenda. Otherwise, I think it'd be in order now to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Motion from David Sander, second from Lisa Miller, motion to adjourn. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I. Didn't want to vote. One of you has to vote.
Yeah.
What?
Just say yes.
Aye.
Okay, and J.I., we are adjourned.
David.
I had to mark, oh, David, I
Was
had
it
to
the-
mark him in ascending order.